voli charter per i ricchi, troppi soldi nei sobborghi. Rivolta, 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 rivolta. Massacro di innocenti e che al posto della noia ci sia solo l'allegria. Niente più controllo, chi conosce polizia, bande di guerrieri fanno rossa la via. Rivolta, rivolta, rivolta. Vogliamo un futuro di sangue per te, ma noi non vogliamo morire con te. E se l'unica chance è la gioventù questa, siamo pronti a gridare, rivolta, 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 rivolta.
Hey, what's up, Speedtards? Welcome to episode 16 of Futurism Forever podcast. Tonight's episode is going to be a Nazmau and Fash collabo. We're going to be reading Armed Joy by Alfredo Bonnano, a classic text of insurrectionary anarchism, years of lead era, Italy. So it should be good. My panel tonight is Zoltanis, Melantip, and Alkaz. So what's up, guys?
Hello, pretty girls.
Yo.
Nazmau gang, represent.
I'm sure there's a lot of pretty girls in the audience, Melantip. DM us pictures of hairy armpits.
No. Only Giovanni should get those pictures.
Big titty golf GFs, please.
Yeah. DM me pictures of your thighs, not your armpits, please.
That's something a femboy would say.
We also, we like thunder thighs, but thick thunder thighs. Anyway,
Thunder thighs.
that's what I call them. That's my Giovanni
Drumsticks.
Yeah. Anyway, it's been a while since we had Zoltanis on. I think last time was Ernst Sneakish, episode 8. So it's been like 8 episodes. It's good to have you back, man.
Yeah, thanks. It's been a while. It definitely has. Hopefully you get more views today since I'm on.
Well, we're at 7, and the live audience has been pretty non-existent lately. Like last time, there was only one guy in the chat. So, hopefully the live audience is popping. And anyway, let's start reading the text. Reading is probably going to be pretty long. The audiobook is like 90 minutes long, so we got a lot to get through. And we're going to be discussing each part. So there's 11 parts.
By the way, guys, this is kind of Fed posty.
This is an edgy text. Anyway, let's look at some of these questions first before we get started. I am not sure if the dude in the photo died or not. It's kind of like a famous photo of the years of lead. It's used a lot, but I'm not sure what became of this dude. My favorite part is like the no gun sign that's like in the corner. And there's this dude in balaclava with a gun. But yeah, Anyway, without further ado, let's start reading. So, in Paris, 1848, the revolution was a holiday without a beginning or an end. Mikhail Bakunin. Why on earth did these dear children shoot Montanelli in the legs? Wouldn't it have been better to have shot him in the mouth? Of course it would, but it would also have been heavier, more vindictive and somber. To lame a beast like that can have a deeper, more meaningful side to it that goes beyond revenge, beyond punishing him for his responsibility, fascist journalists and bosses' lackeys that he is. To lame him forces him to limp, makes him remember. Moreover, laming is more agreeable pastime than shooting in the mouth with pieces of brain squirting out through the eyes. The comrade who sets off in the fog every morning and walks into the stifling atmosphere of the factory or the office only to see the same faces, the foreman, the timekeeper, the spy of the moment, the Stockholmite with 7 children to support, feels the need for revolution, the struggle and the physical clash, even a mortal one. But he also wants to bring himself some joy now, right away, and he nurtures this joy in his fantasies as he walks along, head down in the fog, spends hours on trains or trams, suffocates in the pointless goings-on of the office or amidst the useless bolts that serve to hold the useless mechanisms of capital together. Remunerated joy, weekends off, or annual holidays paid by the boss is like paying to make love. It seems the same, but there is something lacking. Hundreds of theories pile up in books, pamphlets, and revolutionary papers. We must do this, do that, see things the way this one said or that one said, because they are the true interpreters of this or that ones of the past, those in capital letters who fill up the stifling. Even the need to keep them close at hand is all part of the liturgy. Not to have them would be a bad sign. It would be suspect. It is useful to keep them handy in any case. Being heavy, they could always be thrown in the face of some nuisance. Not a new, but nevertheless a healthy confirmation of the validity of the revolutionary texts of the past and present. There is never anything about joy in these tomes. The austerity of the cloister has nothing to envy of the atmosphere one breathes in their pages. Their authors, priests of the revolution, of revenge and punishment, pass their time weighing up blame and retribution. Moreover, these Vestals and Jeans have taken a vow of chastity, so they also expect and impose it. They want to be rewarded for their sacrifice. First, they abandon the comfortable surroundings of their class of origin. Then they put their abilities at the disposal of the disinherited. They have grown accustomed to using words that are not their own and to putting up with dirty tablecloths and unmade beds, so one might listen to them at least. They dream of orderly revolutions, neatly drawn up principles, anarchy without turbulence. If things take a different turn, they start screaming provocation, yelling loud enough for the police to hear them. Revolutionaries are pious folk. The revolution is not a pious event. So that concludes part 1. What did you guys think of what we've read so far?
Who wants to go first?
I have no idea.
My general take from this is basically saying that revolutions are violent. Obviously, they're not meant to have a moral coding, and they have to be total and absolute when they happen. So it has to be a complete aspect of chaos that consumes everything in the society itself. Of course, there's different types of revolutions, but this seems to be closer to probably what you saw go on in Republican Spain, where it's complete and total anarchy, for lack of a better words.
Yeah, I do like that closing remark. Revolutionaries are pious folk. The revolution is not a pious event. Do you guys have thoughts on that statement? It's a pretty brief intro. So
it's kind of similar to what Kojianu would say, where he was a very pious Christian guy, but to take over the country, the legionaries would need to commit unchristian acts.
Yeah.
Based.
Yeah, for sure.
The only revolutions I can think of that aren't violent are the ones where it's just kind of where you force the thing into submission so it can't fight back, kind of like the March on Rome. But most revolutions have to be a complete underturning into society itself. You have to literally destroy everything in the process, or it's not a revolution. And most revolutionaries are just regular people. Sometimes they might be edgelords, but when it happens, it's completely chaotic.
Yeah, for sure. If you want to make an omelet, you got to crack some eggs. Like, people are going to have to get their hands dirty. It's not actual revolutionary action is not so much about like optics or winning over the hearts and minds of the masses. It's like about direct action. From the view of Alfredo Bonnano, anyways. This was the years of lead in Italy, so it was a very like violent era, and yeah, this is like a classic text of that era. It's been very influential in anarchist circles. Yeah, definitely not like the pacifistic kind of anarchism of Leo Tolstoy or someone like that. It's kind of Fed posty. It's kind of encouraging violent acts. Anyway,
Wait, isn't anarchy about violent acts?
it's like the stereotype.
Yeah, but
Insurrectionary anarchists are definitely pro-violence, and yeah, that's what.
yeah, how do you
Yeah,
say
there's
that?
different types of anarchy. Yeah, there's different types. Like
I know.
you have, but like you do have a subgroup of anarchists who just like like Joker chaos. Like that's what they're all about.
Yeah,
But like most of them aren't about that. They're just kind of like don't regulate what I do in my life, and I'll leave you alone. Basically, kind of like how you think of most libertarians. Let me smoke the pot on my
Well,
property,
yeah.
bro.
yeah,
But yeah. I think most people with a brain though would go Mad Max mode and anarchy. I know I would, but
I would too. Okay,
Yeah.
I shouldn't have said that.
yeah, well,
Alright, that was the comment.
I would go Mad Max and Minecraft only.
yeah, definitely like the illegalists, the insurrectionary anarchists, the kind of anarchists we do cover on this channel are not like that. They like doing edgy shit and killing cops, robbing banks, that kind of good stuff. So
Killing cops pleases my
yeah,
ego.
I should probably get this out of the way.
Well,
the
this
disclaimer.
video is getting taken down.
I should probably I should get this out of the way like at the beginning. We're not like endorsing this. We're just analyzing a classic text of anarchism. We're not encouraging violent acts or for anyone to commit crimes.
Yeah, don't take us down, Susan Wojcicki.
That's
We're
right.
just reading this text pleases our ego, but advocating for violence in real life does not pleases our ego.
Yeah, this is just education.
Yeah, this isn't Siege.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got a lot to get through. That was just the intro, so it kind of just sets it up. The closing remark was cool. Let's continue with the reading. Alcaz should be back in a bit too, by the way. He had to drop out for a bit, something came up, but he'll be back hopefully. So part 2, I call a cat, Boliu. We were all concerned with the revolutionary problem of how and what to produce, but nobody points out that producing is a revolutionary problem. If production is at the root of capitalist exploitation, to change the mode of production would merely change the mode of exploitation. A cat, even if you paint it red, is still a cat. The producer is sacred. Hands off. Sanctify his sacrifice in the name of the revolution, and les jeux sont faits. And what will we eat, concerned people will ask. Bread and strings, say the realists, with one eye on the pot and the other on their gun. Ideas, the muddling idealist state, with one eye on the book of dreams and the other on the human species. Anyone who touches productivity has had it. Capitalism and those fighting it sit alongside each other on the producer's corpse, but production must go on. The critique of political economy is a rationalization of the mode of production with the least effort, by those who enjoy the benefits of it all. Everyone else, those who suffer exploitation, must take care to see that nothing is lacking. Otherwise, how would we live? The son of darkness sees nothing when he comes out into the light, just like when he was groping around in the dark. Joy blinds him, it kills him. So he says it is a hallucination and condemns it. The flabby fat bourgeois bask in opulent idleness, so enjoyment is sinful. That would mean sharing the same sensations as the bourgeoisie and betraying those of the producing proletariat. Not so. The bourgeois goes to great lengths to keep the process of exploitation going. He is stressed too and never finds time for joy. His cruises are occasions for new investments. His lovers, fifth columns for getting information on competitors. The productivity god also kills its most faithful disciples. Wrench their heads off. Nothing but a deluge of rubbish will pour out. The hungry wretch harbors feelings of revenge when he sees the rich surrounded by their fawning entourage. The enemy must be destroyed before anything else, but save the booty. Wealth must not be destroyed, it must be used. It doesn't matter what it is. Yeah, the booty. What form it takes or what prospects of employment it allows. What counts is grabbing it from whoever is holding on to it all the time so that everyone has access to it. Everyone? Of course, everyone. How will that happen? With revolutionary violence. Good answer. But really, what will we do after we have cut off so many heads we are bored with it? What will we do when there are no more landlords to be found, even if we go looking for them with lanterns? Then it will be the reign of the revolution, to each according to their needs, from each according to their possibilities. Pay attention, comrade. There is a smell of bookkeeping here. We are talking of consumption and production. Everything is still in the dimension of productivity. Arithmetic makes you feel safe. 2 and 2 make 4. Who would dispute the truth? Numbers rule the world. If they have done till now, why shouldn't they continue to? We all need something solid and durable. Stones to build a wall to stem the impulses that start choking us. We all need objectivity. The boss swears by his wallet, the peasant by his spade, the revolutionary by his gun. Let in a glimmer of criticism and the whole scaffolding will collapse. In its heavy objectivity, the everyday world conditions and reproduces us. We are all children of daily banality. Even when we talk of serious things like revolution, our eyes are still glued to the calendar. The boss fears the revolution because it would deprive him of his wealth. The peasant will make it to get a piece of land. The revolutionary to put his theory to the test. If the problem is seen in these terms, there is no difference between the wallet, land, and revolutionary theory. These objects are all quite imaginary, mere mirrors of human illusion. Only the struggle is real. It distinguishes boss from peasant and establishes the link between the latter and the revolutionary. The forms of organization production takes our ideological vehicles to conceal illusory individual identity. The identity is projected into the illusory economic concept of value. A code establishes its interpretation. The bosses control part of this code, as we see in consumerism. The technology of psychological warfare and total repression also gives its contribution to strengthening the idea that one is human on condition that one produces. Other parts of the code can be modified. They cannot undergo revolutionary change, but are simply adjusted from time to time. Think, for example, of the mass consumerism that has taken the place of the luxury consumerism of years gone by. Then there are more refined forms, such as the self-managed control of production, another component of the code of exploitation, and so on. Anyone who decides to organize my life for me can never be my comrade. If they try to justify this with the excuse that someone must produce, otherwise we will all lose our identity as human beings and be overcome by wild, savage nature. We reply that the man-nature relationship is a product of the enlightened Marxist bourgeoisie. Why did they want to turn a sword into a pitchfork? Why must man continually strive to distinguish himself from nature? So that's part 2. Thoughts?
You have to pee. Wait a second.
It's just me and you. Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like he's like paying attention more to the proletarianization and the hierarchical basis and how capitalism basically exploits people in the society and how it separates people from their nature.
Yeah. There's no room for joy in life. The working man, like all he does is work, and like even the bosses, like there should be like more talk of joy in like revolutionary movements. I think like
Well, a lot of revolutionary movements devolve into misanthropic culture. That's why when you go on Telegram, a lot of the people into the kind of like Fed posty side of politics, a lot of them are misanthropic or like broken toys because they don't have any joy in their life.
Yeah, joy is important. And, if you're not having fun with what you're doing, what's even the point? Like, back in my anarchist days, there was this essay from Crime Think called Your Politics Are Boring as Fuck. I was kind of revisiting it early today. Let me find that quick. I want to read like the 4 points of the manifesto quick. I think it's relevant
that's
to
a nice
Unjoy.
Nice manifesto.
Give me a sec here. There it is. I'm not going to read the whole thing. We might do an episode on this. It's pretty brief text, but I'm just going to read the 4 points here. 1, make politics relevant to our everyday experience of life again. The farther away the object of our political concern, the less it will mean to us, the less real and pressing it will seem to us, and the more wearisome politics will be. 2, all political activity must be joyous and exciting in itself. You cannot escape from dreariness with more dreariness. 3, to accomplish those first 2 steps, entirely new political approaches and methods must be created. The old ones are outdated, outmoded. Perhaps they were never any good. That's why our world is the way it is now. 4, enjoy yourselves. There is never any excuse for being bored or boring. What did you think of like the 4 points? I think revolutionary action should be fun, and it's kind of why I put the emphasis on art and like culture and kind of try and influence political action through art.
Well, that was one of the things, like, even Iron March were kind of bad. Like, one of the things I did agree with them is they had the concept of the archetypes, and they didn't want people to embody one of the archetypes. They wanted an individual in the movement to kind of embody every aspect. And when they embodied every aspect, they'd be able to have fun, and they could basically like live as the self-actualization of the ideology. But at the same time, they could kind of do whatever they wanted and enjoy themselves. And you don't really see that anymore. Like, you don't really see that type of atmosphere being promoted outside of like small niche circles, kind of like this. Most of the people don't really seem like they're having fun. They're either misanthropic, they're very black-pilled, or in some cases they're very schizo, like extremely schizo.
Yeah, I still think honor, truth, wage war, have fun is a pretty great motto to live by. Back in like my Iron March days, like I wanted to get that tattooed on my arm. I'm kind of glad I never did, because I'm very critical of Iron March now and like Iron March fascism, but I still think it's a pretty great motto to live by. Educate yourself, be action orientated, and have fun in the process. Stop taking everything so seriously. Like, if your revolution is boring, like it's a chore, it feels like work, what's even the point? Like, what's up, Lane? Thanks for joining us.
I just joined on because I noticed how little people there were.
Yeah.
I was actually reading right before this.
What were you reading?
Royce.
Yeah. Josiah Royce.
Yep.
The American
Implications of a self-consciousness. That's what I was reading.
Based. Well, thanks for coming on. Did you hear what we read in part 2?
Yeah, parts of it.
Okay. Any thoughts that you want to share, or?
Nothing that hasn't already been said.
Okay. If no one has anything to add, I'll continue reading part 3. Men, if they cannot attain what is necessary, tire themselves with that which is useless. Gotha. Man needs many things. The statement is usually taken to mean that man has needs, which he is obliged to satisfy. In this way, people are transformed from historically determined units into a duality, means and ends simultaneously. They realize themselves through the satisfaction of their needs, i.e. through work, so become the instrument of their own realization. Anyone can see how much mythology is concealed in statements such as this. If man distinguishes himself from nature through work, How can he fulfill himself in the satisfaction of his needs? To do this, he would already have become a man, so have fulfilled his needs, which means he would not have to work. Commodities have a profoundly symbolic content. They become a point of reference, a unit of measure, an exchange value. The spectacle begins. Roles are cast and reproduce themselves to infinity. The actors continue to play their parts without any particular modifications. The satisfaction of needs becomes no more than a reflex, marginal effect. What matters is the transformation of people into things, and everything else along with them. Nature becomes a thing. Used, it is corrupted, and man's vital instincts along with it. An abyss gapes open between nature and man. It must be filled, and the expansion of the commodity market is seen to it. The spectacle is expanding to the point of devouring itself along with its contradictions. Stage and audience enter the same dimension, proposing themselves for a higher, more far-reaching level of the same spectacle, and so on to infinity. Anyone who escapes the commodity code does not become objectified and falls outside the area of the spectacle. They are pointed at. They are surrounded by barbed wire. If they refuse englobement or an alternative form of codification, they are criminalized. They are clearly mad. It is forbidden to refuse the illusory in a world that has based reality on illusion, concreteness on the unreal. Capital manages the spectacle according to the laws of accumulation, but nothing can be accumulated to infinity, not even capital. A quantitative process is absolute, is an illusion, a quantitative illusion to be precise. The bosses understand this perfectly. Exploitation adopts different forms and ideological models precisely to ensure the accumulation in qualitatively different ways, as it cannot continue in the quantitative aspect indefinitely. The fact that the whole process becomes paradoxical and illusory does not matter much to capital, because it is precisely that which holds the reins and makes the rules. If it has to sell illusion for reality, and that makes money, then let's just carry on without asking too many questions. It is the exploited who foot the bill, so it is up to them to see the trick and worry about recognizing reality. For capital, things are fine as they are, even though they are based on the greatest conjuring trick in the world. The exploited almost feel nostalgia for this swindle. They have grown accustomed to their chains and become attached to them. Now and then they have fantasies about fascinating uprisings and bloodbaths. Then they let themselves be taken in by the speeches of the new political leaders. The Revolutionary Party extends capital's illusory perspective to horizons it could never reach on its own. The quantitative illusion spreads. The exploited enlist, count themselves, draw their conclusions. Fierce slogans make bourgeois hearts miss a beat. The greater the number, the more the leaders prance around arrogantly, and the more demanding they become. They draw up great programs for the conquest of power. The new power is preparing to spread on the remains of the old. Bonaparte's soul smiles in satisfaction. Of course, deep changes are being programmed in the code of illusions, but everything must be submitted to the symbol of quantitative accumulation. The demands of the revolution increase as militant forces grow. In the same way, the rate of the social profit, that is taking the place of private profit, must also grow. So capital enters a new illusory spectacular phase. Old needs press on insistently under new labels. The productivity god continues to rule, unrivaled. How good it is to count ourselves. It makes us feel strong. The unions count themselves. The parties count themselves. The bosses count themselves. So do we. Ring of roses. And when we stop counting, we try to ensure that things stay as they are. If change cannot be avoided, we will bring it about without disturbing anyone. Ghosts are easily penetrated. Every now and then, politics come to the fore. Capital often invents ingenious solutions. Then social peace hits us. The silence of the graveyard. The illusion spreads to such an extent that the spectacle absorbs nearly all the available forces. Not a sound. Then the defects of monotony on the mise-en-scene. The curtain rises on unforeseen situations. The capitalist machinery begins to falter. Revolutionary involvement is rediscovered. It happened in '68. Everybody's eyes nearly fell out of their sockets. Everyone extremely ferocious. Leaflets everywhere. Mountains of leaflets and pamphlets and papers and books. Old ideological differences lined up like tin soldiers. Even the anarchists rediscovered themselves, and they did so historically according to the needs of the moment. Everyone was quite dull-witted. The anarchists, too. Some people woke up from their spectacular slumber, and looking around for space and air to breathe, seeing anarchists said to themselves, "At last, here's who I want to be with." They soon realized their mistake. Things did not go as they should have done in that direction either. There, too, stupidity and spectacle. And so they ran away. They closed up in themselves. They fell apart, accepted capital's gain. And if they didn't accept it, they were banished, also by the anarchists. The machinery of 68 produced the best civil servants of the new techno-bureaucratic state, but it also produced its antibodies. The process of the quantitative illusion became evident. On the one hand, it received fresh lymph to build a new view of the community spectacle, of the commodity spectacle. On the other, there was a flaw. It has become blatantly obvious that confrontation at the level of production is ineffective. Take over the factories, the fields, the schools, and the neighborhoods, and self-manage them. The old revolutionary anarchists proclaimed, "We will destroy power in all its forms," they added, but without getting to the roots of the problem. Although conscious of its gravity and extent, they preferred to ignore it, putting their hopes in the creative spontaneity of the revolution. But in the meantime, they wanted to hold on to control of production. Whatever happens, whatever creative forms the revolution might express, we must take over the means of production, they insisted. Otherwise, the enemy will defeat us at that level. So they began to accept all kinds of compromise. They ended up creating another, even more macabre spectacle. And spectacular illusion has its own rules. Anyone who wants to direct it must abide by them. They must know and apply them, swear by them. The first is that production affects everything. If you do not produce, you are not a man. The revolution is not for you. Why should we tolerate parasites? Should we go to work in place of them, perhaps? Should we see to their livelihood as well as our own? Besides, wouldn't all these people with vague ideas, claiming to doing as they please, not turn out to be objectively useful to the counter-revolution? Well, in that case, better attack them right away. We know who our allies are, who we want to side with. If we want to scare, then let's do it together, organized and in perfect order, and may no one put their feet on the table or let their trousers down. Let's organize our specific organizations, train militants who know the techniques of struggle at the place of production. The producers will make the revolution. We will just be there to make sure they don't do anything silly. No, that's all wrong. How will we be able to stop them from making mistakes? The spectacular level of organizations, there are some who are capable of making far more noise than we are. And they have breath to spare. Struggle at the workplace, struggle for the defense of jobs, struggle for production. When will we break out of the circle? When will we stop biting our tails? So that's part 3. Anyone have thoughts? Not all at once, guys.
Yeah.
Let Lane go.
I didn't really have much to say. You can go.
Yeah, I worked a 12-hour shift. Like, no offense, I passed out for a second.
Okay.
Yeah, no offense. I passed out on a job once.
Yeah, I did
and I
other
lost that job.
Oh man, yeah,
Yeah.
like it's been sucking me dry pretty bad. But could you give me like a quick rundown, Gio?
I would say what he's saying in part 3 is the left has it wrong. Like their struggle is to like improve working conditions and make working life more tolerable when the root cause is work itself. You know.
Oh yeah, that's like a criticism most anarchists have. Actually, it's called workerism, which is something that was promoted in the Soviet Union. It's
Yeah.
where like you work or you don't get any contributions from the society itself. Like anarchists believe you shouldn't work if you don't want the work.
Yeah. It's like
Anarchist, but yeah.
yeah, it's the anti-worker sentiment. that
That
a lot
sort
of
of got stronger in like the sort of like
That's why all of them
individualist sects of
didn't matter.
anarchism.
yeah. I don't know.
A lot of them hate Stalin because of it.
Yeah, I'm kind of sympathetic to the anti-worker perspective, to be honest. At least as things stand now, like work sucks. Like if you can get around having to do it, or at least like a formal job type job, you know, it's what you spend most of your waking hours doing, and it makes everybody miserable. Like no one really enjoys what they do for work. Like very few people, anyways.
I can't live as a NEET. I did that for almost a year and I almost killed myself.
Yeah,
I need to work.
when the lockdown first happened like a year ago, I was on I'm Canadian, so like I was on the CERB payments, so like I was getting like enough money that I could pay rent and live without having to work, but that got really boring really quickly. Like
Yeah.
I got more reading done and like could work on things that you know I'm actually passionate
I would love
about,
not
but
to be able to work.
I kind of like I found my life was like directionless though. Like I kind of ended up missing the grind. But
Yeah. I know how you feel.
Oh, well, I'm looking at my crypto and it's going parabolic. Holy crap!
nice.
I personally prefer work to doing school or college work, to be honest.
Yeah.
I would rather not just work wage slave jobs, and that way I could just do like exercising, reading, and
Thoreau
focus on
has
video
an
stuff.
essay like it's like a positive attitude for work, but it's against wage slavery. Henry David Thoreau, what is it? A life without purpose, something like that. So it was a good essay. I remember liking it.
Yeah. I'm gonna take a quick washroom break. I'll be right back. Talk amongst yourselves.
All right, Nazmo gang.
Oh my fucking god.
You know what time it is?
Don't say the
What?
word.
I'm not gonna say the word. I'm just saying we need some R-word gorilla emoji.
What the fuck?
I'm part of the rival gang, the Nazbol gang.
Oh well.
So true.
Nazmo gang will destroy Nazbol gang.
Nah, bro, no.
Nazmals are nationalists who use communist tactics. Nazbols are communists who use nationalist tactics.
Wait, what about Nat Trotsky gang?
Nat Trotsky gang. Nat Trotsky gang is just fascism,
Ah, okay.
just like anarchy. Don't you listen to Haas from Infrared?
No.
Oh,
The
Haas
only
thinks
thing I
that
heard from
Trotsky
Haas-
was a Nazi.
Nigga, he was Jewish.
Yeah, but he invented racism, literally.
Retarded you are.
Yeah,
Trotsky literally invented racism.
and second,
15% of the population they are. Commit 50% of the crime they do. Yes.
fuck.
Get rid of them all.
Here we go.
Get rid of them all.
Is that fucking
Racist Yoda.
Yeah, it's all-
Put on the siege mask, I will.
Oh god. Okay.
All right, I'm done.
Well, Habibi.
When it came to like discussing revolutionary parties and how they just get co-opted into the system, it reminded
always
me a
do.
lot of Sorel's critique of electoral politics.
Oh, Miss Sorrel?
Electoral politics basically subverts everything, including the revolutionary organizations.
Yeah, it's not you who changes the system, providing you do get in. It's the system that changes you. And like you're gonna play ball or you're not gonna be here.
You literally have to
Yeah, your
nuke it
policies
like
get
Mao
watered
did.
down.
You literally have to nuke it like Mao. That's why Nazmao gang is right.
Oh my fucking god.
Yeah, like the current order has to be torn down and we have to build a new. I don't know how to do that exactly, but maybe.
Yeah, we're not saying that we're the Nords from Skyrim and we're rebelling against the Imperials, guys. Don't take it too seriously.
Yeah. Well, we're just reading the text and trying to elaborate on what they're saying.
The real red pill about how the revolution worked on this pamphlet right here is that the Nordicists rose up against the Mediterraneans who were working with the Thalmor Swedes to take over the world.
Yeah.
Are you?
I don't play.
All right, I'll stop memeing. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I agree with what CSD said, though. Yeah. Any final thoughts on workerism or?
All I got to say is my opinion is if you don't work, you don't eat.
Yeah.
If you don't have the money to support yourself, and you should be able to support yourself. If you're not able to support yourself, and then you have to rely on other people. You shouldn't be able to eat. Is my opinion.
Yeah.
I agree
Oh,
with
that's
that.
basically
You're just
what
a
a parasite
parasite. There's no reason to keep you around. You have no use to yourself or
Yeah.
anyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't expect everybody to like take care of you just because you exist. I mean,
You need a really good excuse.
being
Yeah.
a child is a good
About
excuse.
that organization's being corrupted. Ted Kaczynski actually has an essay on that. I remember it's something like the system's neatest trick,
yeah.
where it would the system. It takes a little bit of a different route, but so if the system takes something against it and sort of subverts it into something that's for it.
Oh, that's basically what anti-capitalism got fucked.
Yeah. Ted Kaczynski has an essay like that. It's called The System's Neatest Trick.
What the fuck was that?
I don't know.
Was that a chimpanzee?
It was a child screaming in the basement.
No. Oh god, that sounds like something Nazmal gang would do.
Oh my fucking god.
We should probably get back to reading this though. I want to
Yeah,
make Geo
yeah.
go insane from the shit posting.
Yeah. This is a highbrow podcast.
Yeah.
Please read the text.
We joke, or like we said earlier, like if we're not having fun, what's the point? We're allowed to joke around, guys.
Okay.
It's cool.
Yeah, you're drinking right now. I want to see you get plastered while reading this.
Yeah, my reading will get
by the
worse
way,
as.
on one final note,
What was that?
before we go on to the next section,
Yeah.
can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to know that do any of y'all know like the connections between autonomism and Italian insurrectionary anarchism during that time? Do any of y'all know anything about that or?
No.
The
Nope.
video on your channel about autonomism is pretty much all I know of that, so I can't answer.
Oh no, autonomous nationalists is a completely different thing.
Okay.
Like that's just Strasser's black bloc. Autonomism is basically just a post-Marxist, post-anarchist form of socialism that like was in Italy during that time, and they had a few terrorist groups of their own during the years of lead.
Yeah. We should get into like Brigata Rosa and like the communist group.
Seems like all of them were. It seems like everybody in Italy at that time was acting kind of crazy.
Yeah, it was a very turbulent period. Zol kind of has the definitive video on Franco Freda and Nazi Maoism, and he's created this cult of Nazmao gang. So like that's kind of being covered on his channel already. I'm trying to like cover that era from a different perspective with this episode.
Yeah,
it is a fascinating period, culturally, politically.
Well, the big thing I left out in my video is I found out Gaddafi was actually funding Freda, and so was the CCP. I would have mentioned it but I found it out like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I know Gaddafi was also funding the Red Brigades.
Yeah, also the National Front, and then I believe some of the anarchist organizations. He probably just wanted complete chaos in Italy to happen so they wouldn't go back in Libya.
Many Dog says Nazmao greater than Nazbol.
He created a rivalry.
Yeah.
Just like the Sino-Soviet split.
You provoked a gang war.
Yeah, Maoism versus the Soviet Union.
Yeah, it's playing itself out on the mean streets of the interwebs. It's pretty serious.
Just calling each other racial slow words. That's all. That's everything to it.
Yeah. Anyway,
You young bull.
we got a
What's
lot
up,
to
my
get
Nick?
through.
By the way, does this text mention George Floyd's connections with Franco Freda?
I don't think George Floyd was born yet. This came out in 1977, so.
Sorry. That was a question from Chungus.
Oh, Chungus is my consigliere. He's a feared and respected murderer, so watch out for that one. There's a text mention.
Victim of
Okay.
Chungus.
He's also a war criminal.
Of George Floyd changed
He's
my
a war
mind.
criminal too.
Yeah.
He's also George Floyd.
Chungus is the homie. He does the best George Floyd impression of our young generation is so lost, clearly lost.
You know, I sent that to guys at TRS, and they actually used that like in one of their like podcast episodes.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, Chungus is kind of a legend. He was the one who said the N word on Haz's stream after he got done spazzing out at Carl.
Yes.
his trolling is legendary. He had a funny spin on the George Floyd quote. Our old generation is clearly lost. Clearly lost. Niggas is going around posting cringe, being gay. Like, I thought it was funny. But I can't do it as well as him, though, so I'm going to stop. But, yeah, let's read part 4.
You should come on one of these sometime.
He has connection issues. I've tried to get him on, but yeah.
Well, I've been having connection issues this entire time. I still came on.
Yeah, you know, I'd love to have him on. He can click the invite link. It's in the chat if he wants to. Anyway, let's read part 4. We have a lot to get through still. The deformed man must always find mirrors that make him handsome. Marquis de Sade. What madness the love of work is. With great scenic skill, capital has succeeded in making the exploited love exploitation, the hanged man the rope, and the slave his chains. The idealization of work has been the death of the revolution until now. The movement of the exploited has been corrupted by the bourgeois morality of production, which is not only foreign to it, but is also contrary to it. It is no accident that the trade unions were the first sector to be corrupted, precisely because of their closer proximity to the management of the spectacle of production. It is time to oppose the non-work aesthetic to the work ethic. We must counter the satisfaction of spectacular needs imposed by consumer society with the satisfaction of man's natural needs, seen in the light of that primary essential need, the need for communism. In this way, the quantitative evaluation of needs is overturned. The need for communism transforms all other needs and their pressures on man. Man's poverty, the consequence of exploitation, has been seen as the foundation of future redemption. Christianity and revolutionary movements have walked hand in hand throughout history. We must suffer in order to conquer paradise, or to acquire the class consciousness that will take us to the revolution. Without the work ethic, the Marxist notion of proletariat would not make sense. But the work ethic is a product of the same bourgeois rationalism that allowed the bourgeoisie to conquer power. Corporatism resurfaces through the mesh of proletarian internationalism. Everyone struggles within their own sector. At most, they contact similar ones in other countries, through the unions. The monolithic multinationals are opposed by monolithic international unions. Let's make the revolution, but save the machinery, the working tool, that mythical object that reproduces the historical virtue of the bourgeoisie. Now is the hands of the proletariat. The heir to the revolution is destined to become the consumer and main actor of the capitalist spectacle of tomorrow. Idealized at the level of the clash, at the beneficiary of its outcome, the revolutionary class disappears in the idealization of production. When the exploited come to be enclosed within a class, all the elements of the spectacular already exist, just as they do for the class of exploiters. The only way for the exploited to escape the globalizing project of capital is through the refusal of work, production, and political economy. But refusal of work must not be confused with lack of work, in a society which is based on the latter. The marginalized look for work. They do not find it. They are pushed into ghettos. They are criminalized. Then that all becomes part of the management of the productive spectacle as a whole. Producers and unemployed are equally indispensable to capital, but the balance is a delicate one. Contradictions explode and produce various kinds of crisis, and it is in this context that revolutionary intervention takes place. So the refusal of work, the destruction of work, is an affirmation of the need for non-work, the affirmation that man can reproduce and objectify himself in non-work through the various solicitations that this stimulates in him. The idea of destroying work is absurd if it is seen from the point of view of the work ethic. But how? So many people are looking for work, so many unemployed, and you talk about destroying work? The Luddite ghost appears and puts all the revolutionaries who have read all the classics to fright. The rigid model of the frontal attack on capitalist forces must not be touched. All the failures and sufferings of the past are irrelevant. So is the shame and betrayal. Ahead, comrades, better days will come, onwards again. It would suffice to show what the concept of free time, a temporary suspension of work, is bogged down in today to scare proletarians back into the stagnant atmosphere of the class organizations, parties, unions, and hangers-on. The spectacle offered by the bureaucratic leisure organizations is deliberately designed to depress even the most fertile imagination. But this is no more than an ideological cover, one of the many instruments of the total war that make up the spectacle as a whole. The need for communism transforms everything. Through the need for communism, the need for non-work moves from the negative aspect, opposition to work, to the positive one, the individual's complete availability to themselves, the possibility to express themselves absolutely freely, breaking away from all models, even those considered to be fundamental and indispensable, such as those of production. But revolutionaries are dutiful people and are afraid to break with all models, not least that of revolution, which constitutes an obstacle to the full realization of what the concept means. They are afraid they might find themselves without a role in life. Have you ever met a revolutionary without a revolutionary project? A project that is well defined and presented clearly to the masses. Whatever kind of revolutionary would be one who claimed to destroy the model, the wrapping, the very foundations of the revolution. By attacking concepts such as quantification, class, project, model, historical task, and other such old stuff, one would run the risk of having nothing to do, of being obliged to act in reality, modestly, like everyone else, like millions of others who are building the revolution day by day without waiting for signs of a fatal deadline. And to this you need courage. With rigid models and little quantitative gains, you remain within the realm of the unreal, the illusory project of the revolution, an amplification of the spectacle of space. By abolishing the ethic of production, you enter revolutionary reality directly. It is difficult even to talk about such things because it does not make sense to mention them in the pages of a treatise. To reduce these problems to a complete and final analysis would be to miss the point. The best thing would be an informal discussion capable of bringing about the subtle magic of wordplay. It is a real contradiction to talk of joy seriously. That concludes part 4. Thoughts?
It ended on an interesting line, but a lot of it I was reading, you could link it to what we're reading with the Bonnano gang.
The Bonnano gang? Yeah.
With its sort of views on work.
Yeah. Insurrectionary anarchism and illegalism. There's definitely like a lot of shared ideas between the two currents.
A lot of crossover too.
Yeah, they definitely take. I think the same people are interested in both ideas, to be honest.
Yeah. If you're interested in insurrectionary anarchism, chances are you're going to be interested in illegalism.
Yeah, Alfredo Bonnano actually did rob banks and did time in prison for it. So
yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't feel sorry for the banks. I don't think that's even Fed posty. Good comment. So this is the edgier and more situationist version of Bob Black. Bob Black has an essay on the abolition of work that I thought was really cool in my more formative years. I haven't revisited it in a long time, so I don't really want to comment on it. Yeah. Has anyone read Society of the Spectacle by Guy Debord?
No.
Never heard of it.
I watched the movie a few years ago. But yeah, that's what he's referring to as situationist version of Bob Black. The Revolution of Everyday Life by Vanagan, I think is his name. I actually enjoyed that text a lot more. Maybe we'll cover it on the podcast at some point. It is worth reading. It's a good text. But yeah, he's just kind of elaborating on the anti-workerism here. A lot of fleshing out the ideas in part 3 and part 4.
Yeah. It's not really stuff I have strong opinions on because I'm not really in favor like anti-workers.
Yeah, I bounce back and forth. I think people should work. It all depends on how you define work, right? If you're not working and you're just staying home playing video games, beating off to anime and shit, whoever's breathing in their mic, stop doing that. It's
Sorry.
distracting.
It's an Allen tip.
Yeah. And what was I saying? Yeah, I mean, if like
Oh, watching anime.
if you're just collecting welfare checks and like playing video games, beating off to anime, eating junk food, like yeah, I don't really respect you. But you know, working on you can work on other projects that you're passionate about. Like if you're still working on it, like if Zolt was working on his YouTube channel or something, or writing essays, translating books, like I still consider that work. So, you know, you probably don't earn enough off it to like earn a living, which is why you have to work in a factory.
Yeah, that's why I put all my money in my cryptocurrency too.
Yeah, same with me. Like if I could earn a living off of futurism forever, I'd do it full time, and the content would be so much better, right? But I can only do it part time because I got to pay rent, I got to pay bills, you know, I got to feed myself. So, you know,
And alcohol.
yeah, I got to buy booze like that. It's getting cigarettes like costs us through the fucking roof, bro. Like you got to work, you got to spend like every waking hour, like.
You're breathing in the mic again, bro.
He does that. I had to mute him in the voice chat last night. Try to just.
Sorry, I was playing more though. Okay.
Yeah,
This just happens.
when you're not talking, like mute your mic or try and control your breathing.
Like I said, there was an essay on work Henry David Thoreau had that I remember reading and I liked, but that was a long time ago.
Ex Murica is a faggot. Like losers are winners, bro. I work all week. Like I don't just sit around drinking all day. On the weekend, I like to drink. Fuck that shit. Don't judge me.
I probably work too much.
Yeah, you and me both.
I work 10 hours and sometimes 12 hours. I hate it.
Yeah, me and
Then work
you
less.
work like 7 days a week. I worked like 4 when I was working 12 hours.
Yeah, I work 7 days a week. I'm always tired. That's why I don't have time to work on like scripts at the moment.
Yeah.
Me and Chungus are both vino drinkers. We have good taste. We drink good shit. Like I'm not drinking a cool 45 here, bro. Like, is what it is. Yeah. We got derailed by because I mentioned in passing that I like to drink. Anyway, should I continue reading, or does anyone have more thoughts on workerism? All right, part 5. Summer nights are heavy. One sleeps badly in tiny rooms. It is the eve of the guillotine. Zo da Axa. The exploited also find time to play, but their play is not joy. It is a macabre ritual, an awaiting death, a suspension of work in order to lighten the pressure of the violence accumulated during the activity of production. In the illusory world of commodities, play is also an illusion. We imagine we are playing, while all we are really doing is monotonously repeating the roles assigned to us by capital. When we become conscious of the process of exploitation, the first thing we feel is a sense of revenge. The last is joy. Liberation is seen as setting right a balance that has been upset by the wickedness of capitalism, not as the coming of a world of play to take the place of the world of work. This is the first phase of the attack on the bosses, the phase of immediate awareness. What strikes us are the chains, the whip, the prison walls, sexual and racial barriers. Everything must come down, so we arm ourselves and strike the adversary to make them pay for their responsibility. During the night of the guillotine, the foundations for a new spectacle are laid. Capital regains strength. First the boss's heads fall, then those of the revolutionaries. It is impossible to make the revolution with the guillotine alone. Revenge is the antechamber of power. Anyone who wants to avenge themselves requires a leader to take them to victory and restore wounded justice. And whoever cries for vengeance wants to come into possession of what has been taken away from them, right to the supreme abstraction, the appropriation of surplus value. The world of the future must be one where everybody works. Fine. So we will have imposed slavery on everyone with the exception of those who make it function, and who precisely for that reason become the new bosses. No matter what, the bosses must pay for their wrongs. Very well. We carry the Christian ethic of sin, judgment, and reparation into the revolution, as well as the concepts of debt and payment, clearly of mercantile origins. That is all part of the spectacle. Even when it is not managed by power directly, it can easily be taken over. Role reversal is one of the techniques of drama. It might be necessary to attack using the arms of revenge and punishment at a certain moment in the class struggle. The movement might not possess any others, so it will be the moment for the guillotine, but revolutionaries must be aware of the limitations of such arms. They should not deceive themselves or others. Within the paranoid framework of a rationalizing machine such as capitalism, the concept of the revolution of revenge can even become part of the spectacle as it continually adapts itself. The movement of production seems to come about thanks to the blessing of economic science, but in reality, it is based on the illusory anthropology of the separation of tasks. There is no joy in work, even if it is self-managed. The revolution cannot be reduced to a simple reorganization of work. Not that alone. There is no joy in sacrifice, death, and revenge, just as there is no joy in counting oneself. Arithmetic is the negation of joy. Anyone who desires to live does not produce death. A transitory acceptance of the guillotine leads to its institutionalization, but at the same time, anyone who loves life does not embrace their exploiter. To do so would signify that they are against life in favor of sacrifice, self-punishment, work, and death. In the graveyard of work, centuries of exploitation have accumulated a huge mountain of revenge. The leaders of the revolution sit upon the mountain impassively. They study the best way to draw profit from it. So the spur of revenge must be addressed against the interests of the new caste in power. Symbols and flags, slogans and complicated analysis. The ideological apparatus does everything that is necessary. It is the work ethic that makes this possible. Anyone who delights in work and wants to take over the means of production does not want things to go ahead blindly. They know by experience that the bosses have had a strong organization on their side in order to make exploitation work. They think that just as strong and perfect an organization will make liberation possible. Do everything in your power. Productivity must be saved at all costs. What a swindle. The work ethic is the Christian ethic of sacrifice. The boss's ethic, thanks to which the massacres of history have followed each other with worrying regularity. These people cannot comprehend that it would be possible to not produce any surplus value, and that one could also refuse to do so, that it is possible to assert one's will to not produce. So struggle against both the boss's economic structures and the ideological ones that permeate the whole of Western thought. It is essential to understand that the work ethic is the foundation of the quantitative revolutionary project. Arguments against work would be senseless. If they were made by revolutionary organizations with their logic of quantitative growth, the substitution of the work ethic with the aesthetic of joy would not mean an end to life, as so many worried comrades would have it. To the question, what will we eat? One could quite simply reply, what we produce. Only production would no longer be the dimension in which man determines himself, as that would come about in the sphere of play and joy. One could produce as something separate from nature, then join with it as something that is nature itself. So it would be possible to stop producing at any moment. When there is enough, only joy will be uncontrollable, a force unknown to the civilized larvae that populate our era, a force that will multiply the creative impulse of the revolution 1,000-fold. The social wealth of the communist world is not measured in an accumulation of surplus value, even if it turns out to be managed by a minority that calls itself the party of the proletariat. The situation reproduces power and denies the very essence of anarchy. Communist social wealth comes from the potential for life that comes after the revolution. Qualitative, not quantitative. Accumulation must substitute capitalist accumulation. The revolution of life takes the place of the merely economic revolution. Productive potential takes the place of crystallized production. Joy takes the place of the spectacle. The refusal of the spectacular market of capitalist illusions will create another kind of exchange, from fictitious quantitative change to a real qualitative one. Circulation of goods will not base itself on objects and their illusionist reification, but on the meaning that the objects have for life. And this must be a life meaning, not a death one. So these objects will be limited to the precise moment in which they are exchanged, and their significance will vary according to the situations in which they take place. The same object could have profoundly different values. It will be personified. Nothing to do with production as we know it now, in the dimension of capital. Exchange itself will have a different meaning when seen through the refusal of unlimited production. There is no such thing as freed labor. There is no such thing as integrated labor, manual, intellectual. What does exist is the division of labor and the sale of the workforce, i.e., the capitalist world of production. The revolution is the negation of labor and the affirmation of joy. Any attempt to impose the idea of work, fair work, work without exploitation, self-managed work where the exploited are to reappropriate themselves of the whole of the productive process without exploitation is a mystification. The concept of the self-management of production is valid only as a form of struggle against capitalism. In fact, it cannot be separated from the idea of the self-management of the struggle. If the struggle is extinguished, self-management becomes nothing other than self-management of one's exploitation. If the struggle is victorious, the self-management of production becomes superfluous, because after the revolution, the organization of production is superfluous and counter-revolutionary. So that's part 5. Anyone have? Anyone?
I mean, I didn't have
noticed
much of
a
an
lot
opinion
of
on it.
I noticed a lot of sort of life-affirming passages in this one, this section.
We're
Sort of like
exploited.
life-affirming.
We're being exploited this bad. We have to affirm ourselves. It's about becoming. We have to destroy it for that reason.
Yeah.
Yada yada yada. It's basically a quick way to sum it down. I'm gonna use the restroom though.
Okay.
Wait, how long is this text? Wait, how many chapters are there?
There are 11 chapters. They're all very brief. We're like halfway through. So
Nice.
we're making better time than I thought we would. Like the audio book is like 90 minutes long, and we've been like discussing each chapter. So
Maybe the audiobook is just slow and we're just too fast for the audiobook.
well, like we are stopping to discuss. The audiobook just reads. So, it is going to be like 90 minutes of reading. So it is what it is. I don't know. I like Zolda's being kind of dismissive of it, but like I do think like life is meant to be enjoyed, and we're stuck in this like capitalist cycle of just production, consumption. It does make people miserable. We do have to.
Alienated.
I do agree that like a consumer economy where it's just nothing but like work and consume, that it's bad, yeah, but there's actually people who like work. I do think that work is a part of becoming, that when people actually do it.
I like work.
Now, if we're talking about like the economy itself, like I think you could probably argue in the past it wasn't like this, but there's a big difference with the economy then and now.
That's sort of the Hegelian perspective.
The 70s, like in the 60s, I know when this was taking place during the years of lead, the economy was basically like a shithole.
Yeah.
Still is.
Still is.
Bro, there's probably a crash very near us. Like, unironically. What the fuck?
Chungus, be nice to James. Sorry, just reacting to the chat.
But no, I sort of agree with Zolt. You need work to sort of affirm yourself.
Yeah. Bonnano's whole argument is that like just reorganizing the means of production or something like that. Like,
His argument is that it still has work and you still have to work.
Yeah.
which is what sort of like an egoist would also say.
Yeah, like back in like the agrarian days or whatever, when people did like farm work and shit. Like I think like work life and home life and like work and play was like less clearly defined, and like it was more like chores, like that you have to do.
I wouldn't necessarily put like church. If you go back far enough, though, like before agrarianism, there really was no difference between work and any other aspect of what life. You didn't. There's a psychological difference as far as how work goes in that situation, which is someone like Bob Black will try to point out less working hours using sort of like data that's not even really true.
I'm going
But
to say the R word and then R word you if you don't stop breathing in your mic.
Yeah, Melon Tip, mute your mic when you're not talking, man.
Unbelievable.
It's the Romanian moment.
Yeah, sorry.
Romanian.
well,
Like,
he's Serbian, but
Serbian.
yeah.
Oh
With-
God. He's Turkish.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, like I'm competing with Darth Vader here, who.
Yeah.
Darth Vader.
We all are. But I was talking. I was
Yeah.
talking about sort of a psychological difference between work back then and work now.
Yeah, work and play, and it was less clearly defined. Whereas now, like when you're in work mode, it's totally different from when you're enjoying life and doing things you actually want to do.
And if you go back far enough, there's no distinction between any of that
Yeah,
at all. And where work doesn't even really mean work. And someone like Bob Black will point out different working hours as some sort of proof, or Zonziers, as some sort of proof for how good primitive society was, besides the fact that data that they use isn't really real and very dependent on area.
yeah. To relate this back to
It's a very
futurism,
different kind of attitude that you're going to have when you hunt for food and
yeah,
you bring that back versus you go to work, you work 8 hours, then you come back, go sleep, wake up, go work 8 hours, come back.
yeah. To relate this back to futurism and like technology and stuff, like the main theme of the channel. Technology was supposed to like result in less work hours and like we'd have more time for play and like whereas we're still working 40 plus hours a week. It has like alleviated some of the mundane things we used to have to do.
No, the average working hour used to be like 13.
Yeah, like
So
back
it has
then.
gone down.
Yeah, I guess.
That's not even too far back. My family owns a ranch. I was talking to a really old guy, and he was talking about his grandfather. They would work at like an average of 13-hour days.
Yeah, that's stupid. I wouldn't want to do that. I have worked like.
And you can look at like Bismarck set the working hour to like 11. The Weimar Republic set it down to 10. The Nazis ended up moving it back to 11. And now I believe currently in Germany, the average is like 8. So yes, it's going down.
Yeah, that's good. Hopefully it goes down even more. I want the 4-hour workday.
Well, communists are advocating for the 4-hour workday, and Ezra Pound already advocated the 4-hour workday.
Yeah. I don't know. With capitalism, capitalism demands constant growth and production. And like we produce more than we really need.
Overproduction.
Yeah, it's like there's no need for it.
Most of that production is shipped off overseas, which takes away jobs locally.
Yeah. Anyway, any final thoughts on part 5 before I get into part 6?
no, it's fine.
All right, all right, part 6. So long as you make the throw yourself, everything is skill and easy winning. Only if you suddenly become the one catching the ball that the eternal playmate throws at you at your center with all her strength. And one of those arcs of great divine bridge builders, only then is being able to catch strength, not yours, but of a world, Rilk. We all believe we have experienced joy. Each single one of us believes we have been happy at least once in our lives. Only this experience of joy has always been passive. We happen to enjoy ourselves. We cannot desire joy, just as we cannot oblige joy to present itself when we want it to. All this separation between ourselves and joy depends on our being separate from ourselves, divided in two by the process of exploitation. We work all the year round to have the joy of holidays. When these come round, we feel obliged to enjoy the fact that we are on holiday, a form of torture like any other. The same goes for Sundays, a dreadful day. The rarefaction of the illusion of free time shows us the emptiness of the mercantile spectacle we are living in. The same empty gaze alights on the half-empty glass, the TV screen, the football match, the heroin dose, the cinema screen, traffic jams, neon lights, prefabricated homes that have completed the killing of the landscape. To seek joy in the depths of any of the various recitals of the capitalist spectacle would be pure madness. But that is exactly what capital wants. The experience of free time programmed by our exploiters is lethal. It makes you want to go to work. To apparent life, one ends up preferring certain death. No real joy can reach us from the rational mechanism of capitalist exploitation. Joy does not have fixed rules to catalog it. Even so, we must be able to desire joy. Otherwise, we would be lost. The search for joy is therefore an act of will, a firm refusal of the fixed conditions of capital and its values. The first of these refusals is that of work as a value. The search for joy can only come about through the search for play. So play means something different to what we are used to considering it to be in the dimension of capital. Like serene idleness, the play that opposes itself to the responsibilities of life is an artificial, distorted image of what it really is. At the present stage of the clash and the relative constrictions in the struggles against capital, play is not a pastime but a weapon. By a strange twist of irony, the roles are reversed. If life is something serious, death is an illusion, in the sense that so long as we are alive, death does not exist. Now, the reign of death, i.e. the reign of capital, which denies our very existence as human beings and reduces us to things, seems very serious, methodical, and disciplined. But its possessive paroxysm, its ethical rigor, its obsession with doing all hide a great illusion, the total emptiness of the commodity spectacle, the uselessness of indefinite accumulation, and the absurdity of exploitation. So the great seriousness of the world of work and productivity hides a total lack of seriousness. On the contrary, the refusal of this stupid world, the pursuit of joy, dreams, utopia, and this declared lack of seriousness hides the most serious thing in life, the refusal of death. In the physical confrontation with capital, play can take different forms. Even on this side of the fence, many things can be done playfully, yet most of the things we do very seriously, wearing the death mask we have borrowed from capital. Play is characterized by a vital impulse that is always new, always in movement. By acting as though we are playing, we charge our action with all this impulse. We free ourselves from death. Play makes us feel alive. It gives us the excitement of life. In the other model of acting, we do everything as though it were a duty, as though we had to do it. It is in the very new excitement of play, quite the opposite to the alienation and madness of capital, that we are able to identify joy. Here lies the possibility to break with the old world and identify with new aims and other values and needs. Even if joy cannot be considered man's aim, it is undoubtedly the privileged dimension that makes the clash with capital different when it is pursued deliberately. Thoughts?
I sort of blanked out for a bit, but I sort of got a lot of passages about affirming joy. Again, that's comparable to futurism, I guess.
Yeah, it's basically talking about how you have to affirm yourself, and to affirm yourself, you have to go against the system and kind of like tear down the system so you can actually
Tear down
self-actualize yourself.
capital,
Yeah,
down
get rid of
what-
it so you can self-actualize, basically.
I think the anarchists don't understand how people actualize, but whatever. We sort of talked about that already.
Yeah, like our discussion kind of, I think, set up that that chapter pretty nicely.
Where does it actually get kind of glowy with the violence?
It's coming. It's coming.
It got that a little bit of that at the beginning, but
there is the part 7 kind of gets into it. What we're reading next. So I think we've talked about work and
yeah, we sort of stated all of our thoughts on work.
yeah, like
Purpose.
the well is running dry as far as things to add. And yeah, I think we kind of said everything that we had to say after part 5 for part 6. So I'm just going to continue reading.
I wish I read this beforehand. I feel unprepared.
I want to, when it gets to like the more violent revolutionary aspects, I kind of want to talk a bit there about Freda's like strategy, attention.
Yeah, that's why I invited you on to talk about Franco Freda and draw parallels with the strategy of tension. Bonnano also has a text that gets into that more called the anarchist tension. It's like very similar. Obviously, the ideology is different, but
yeah, Fredo just wanted his guys to infiltrate left-wing organizations and just get them to commit terrorism, because then it would make the state destabilize and suppress them, and then they could come in as the people to kind of like take power, because they would be the ones actually able to suppress it.
all right, save that for after part 7, because we're getting into action here. Part 7. Life is so boring there is nothing to do except spend all our wages on the latest skirt or shirt. Brothers and sisters, what are your real desires? Sit in the drugstore, look distant, empty, bored, drinking some tasteless coffee, or perhaps blow it up or burn it down. The Angry Brigade. The great spectacle of capital has swallowed us all up to our necks, actors and spectators in turn. We alternate the roles, either staring open-mouthed at others or making others stare at us. We have alighted the glass couch, even though we know it only a pumpkin. The fairy godmother's spell has beguiled our critical awareness. Now we must play the game, until midnight at least. Poverty and hunger are still the driving forces of the revolution, but capital is widening the spectacle. It wants new actors on stage. The greatest spectacle in the world will continue to surprise us. Always more complicated, better and better organized. New clowns are getting ready to mount the rostrum. New species of wild beasts will be tamed. The supporters of quantity, lovers of arithmetic, will be first on and will be blinded by the limelight, dragging the masses of necessity and the ideologies of redemption along behind them. But one thing they will not be able to get rid of is their seriousness. The greatest danger they face will be a laugh. In the spectacle of capital, joy is deadly. Everything is gloomy and funereal. Everything is serious and orderly. Everything is rational and programmed, precisely because it is all false and illusory. Beyond the crisis, beyond other problems of underdevelopment, beyond poverty and hunger, the last fight that capital will have to put up, the decisive one, is the fight against boredom. The revolutionary movement will also have to fight its battles, not just the traditional ones against capital, but new ones against itself. Boredom is attacking it from within, is causing it to deteriorate, making it asphyxiating, uninhabitable. Let us leave those who like the spectacle of capitalism alone, those who are quite happy to play their parts to the end. These people think that reforms really can change things, but this is more an ideological cover than anything else. They know only too well that changing bits is one of the rules of the system. It is useful to capital to have things fixed a little at a time. Then there is the revolutionary movement, where there is no lack of those who attack the power of capital verbally. These people cause a great deal of confusion. They come out with ground statements, but no longer impress anyone. Least of all capital, which cunningly uses them for the most delicate part of its spectacle. When it needs a soloist, it puts one of these performers on stage. The result is pitiful. The truth is that the spectacular mechanism of commodities must be broken by entering the domain of capital, its coordinating centers, right to the very nucleus of production. Think what a marvelous explosion of joy, what a great creative leap forward, what an extraordinarily aimless aim. Only it is difficult to enter the mechanisms of capital joyfully, with the symbols of life. Armed struggle is often a symbol of death, not because it gives death to the bosses and their servants, but because it wants to impose the structures of the dominion of death itself. Conceived differently, it really would be joy in action, capable of breaking the structural conditions imposed by the commodity spectacle, such as the military party, the conquest of power, the vanguard. This is the other enemy of the revolutionary movement: incomprehension, refusal to see the new conditions of the conflict, the insistence on imposing models of the past that have now become part of the commodity spectacle. Ignorance of the new revolutionary reality is leading to a lack of theoretical and strategic awareness of the revolutionary capacity of the movement itself. And it is not enough to say that there are enemies so close at hand, so as to make it indispensable to intervene right away without looking at questions of a theoretical nature. All this hides the incapacity to face the new reality of the movement and avoid the mistakes of the past that have serious consequences in the present. And this refusal nourishes all kinds of rationalist political illusions. Categories such as revenge, leaders, parties, the vanguard, quantitative growth only mean something in the dimension of the society, and such a meaning favors the perpetuation of power. When you look at things from a revolutionary point of view, i.e. the complete definitive elimination of all power, these categories become meaningless. By moving into the nowhere of utopia, upsetting the work ethic, turning it into the here and now of joy and realization, we find ourselves within a structure that is far from the historical form of organization. The structure changes continually, so escapes crystallization. It is characterized by the self-organization of producers at the workplace and the self-organization of the struggle against work, not the taking over of the means of production, but the refusal of production through organizational forms that are constantly changing. The same is happening with the unemployed and the casual laborers. Stimulated by boredom and alienation, structures are emerging on the basis of self-organization. The introduction of aims programmed and imposed by an outside organization would kill the movement and consign it to the commodity spectacle. Most of us are tied to this idea of revolutionary organization. Even anarchists who refuse authoritarian organization do not disdain it. On this basis, we all accept the idea that the contradictory reality of capital can be attacked with similar means. We do so because we are convinced that these means are legitimate, emerging as they do from the same field of struggle as capital. We refuse to admit that not everyone might see things the way we do. Our theory is identical to the practice and strategy of our organizations. The differences between the authoritarians and ourselves are many, but they all collapse before a common faith in the historical organization. Anarchy will be reached through the work of these organizations. Substantial differences only appear in methods of approach. But this faith indicates something very important: the claim of our whole rationalist culture to explain reality in progressive terms. The culture bases itself on the idea that history is irreversible, along with that of the analytical capacity of science. All this makes us see the present as the point where all the efforts of the past meet the culminating point of the struggle against the powers of darkness, capitalist exploitation. Consequently, we are convinced that we are more advanced than our predecessors, capable of elaborating and putting into practice theories and organizational strategies that are the sum of all the experiences of the past. All those who reject this interpretation automatically find themselves beyond reality, which is by definition history, progress, and science. Whoever refuses such a reality is anti-historical, anti-progressive, and anti-scientific, sentenced without appeal. Strengthened by this ideological armor, we go into the streets. Here we run into the reality of a struggle that is structured quite differently from stimuli that do not enter the framework of our analysis. One fine morning during a peaceful demonstration, the police start shooting. The structure reacts, comrades shoot too. Policemen fall. Anathema. It was a peaceful demonstration. For it to have degenerated into individual guerrilla actions, there must have been a provocation. Nothing can go beyond the perfect framework of our ideological organization, as it is not a part of reality, but is all reality. Anything beyond it is madness and provocation. Supermarkets are destroyed. Shops and food, arms depots are looted. Luxury cars are burned. It is an attack on the commodity spectacle in its most conspicuous forms. The new structures are moving in that direction. They take form suddenly, with only the minimum strategic orientation necessary. No frills, no long analytical premises, no complex supporting theories. They attack. Comrades identify with these structures. They reject the organizations that give power, equilibrium, waiting, death. Their action is a critique of the wait-and-see suicidal positions of these organizations. Anathema, there must have been a provocation. There is a breakaway from traditional political models, which is becoming a critique of the movement itself. Irony becomes a weapon, not closed within a writer's study, but en masse in the streets. Not only the boss's servants, but also revolutionary leaders from a far off and recent past are finding themselves in difficulty as a result. The mentality of the small-time boss and leading group is also put in crisis. Anathema. The only legitimate critique is that against the bosses, and it must comply with the rules laid down by the historical tradition of class struggle. Anyone who strays from the seminary is a provocateur. People are tired of meetings, the classics, pointless marches, theoretical discussions that split hairs in four, endless distinctions, the monotony and poverty of certain political analysis. They prefer to make love, smoke, listen to music, go for walks, sleep, laugh, play, kill policemen, lame journalists, kill judges, blow up barracks. Anathema. The struggle is only legitimate when it is comprehensible to the leaders of the revolution. Otherwise, there being a risk that the situation might go beyond their control, there must have been a provocation. Hurry, comrade, shoot the policeman, the judge, the boss, now before a new police prevent you. Hurry to say no before the new repression convinces you that saying no is pointless, mad, and that you should accept the hospitality of the mental asylum. Hurry to attack capital before a new ideology makes it sacred to you. Hurry to refuse work before some new sophist tells you yet again that work makes you free. Hurry to play. Hurry to arm yourself. So part 7, he's getting more into action. It's where he starts.
Will the power might makes right type stuff.
Not exactly. I thought it was interesting. They sort of the contradiction to Reed's anarchism. There was a line on that where you got these organizations. It's ultimately, in a sense, contradictory to anarchism, but it's needed to fulfill the revolution. Which this is, in my opinion, the main difference between the utopians in France and the anarchists is that the utopians sort of view that their reality will come about because it's ethical, so it would just come about. Whereas the anarchist came up with strategy.
Yeah.
I do think another thing that could probably be pointed out, actually, is it kind of brings to mind Bordiga's quote, "The worst thing to come out of fascism is anti-fascism." Most anti-fascist are anarchist organizations, but they're co-opted, controlled by the liberal power structure.
Yeah, Bordiga said that, and he's right. So.
Yeah. Wasn't Franco Freda funded by some pretty sketchy people like the Masons? The CIA?
Yeah, Freda got money from the American CIA, KGB, the CCP, Gaddafi, the local Masonic lodges, the Italian secret services, and yeah, so like that guy had he was getting funding from both sides, so like he was either playing both sides really well. It's like God.
He was well funded. Like that's a long list of supporters.
Yeah.
So just thought I'd bring that up. Yeah, Franco Freda doesn't actually come up in this text, obviously.
It's funny though too, because Freda is anti-Mason, but the Masons were acting as an intelligence group for him.
Yeah. What was their involvement? Like, did they just?
So what they would do is they would. So the Masons would go around and they would have people eavesdrop or gather information on what the communists were doing or like other nationalist organizations, and then they would feed it back to his organization, so they always knew what was going on in the scene.
Yeah. Before I forget, Zol, can you send me the podcast that TRS used my voice message in?
I would have to find it. I could try.
Yeah, send that to him in DMs. Just thought I'd put that on. Armed data based. Can you guys read Italian? Zol did translate.
I can't read
La
Italian.
filosofia di Marx.
I
Yeah,
may be able to read German soon. I bought a few things on that for something else, but
I was trying to learn Italian with Duolingo. I just didn't keep up with it. I think I need to I'm thinking of taking some Italian for adults classes. It's on my list of things to do. I do want to learn Italian, but as of right now, I know the basics, but I'm not conversational or fluent at all. So it's what living in Canada does to you. Yeah, I'm kind of an English only guy. Zol probably speaks it
I'm the
better than
same.
the rest
English
of
is the
us.
only language I know.
Oh yeah, by the way, the guy we're reading right now, he has a similar take to Bordiga on anti-fascism.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it's called "What Can We Do with Anti-Fascism." One of my friends is watching the stream. Is like a communist. Sent it to me.
who's that?
Their name is Kiri.
Yeah, you don't have to mention names. I forget this is live, so it's not like a.
Oh, it's not the real name. It's an alias.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, final thoughts on part 7.
It glows harder than Hiroshima after the bomb drop.
Mm-hmm. Nuclear radioactivity flowing, which is pretty based, if I do say so myself. So yeah, let's continue to part 8. There will be no revolution until the Cossacks descend. Corduroy. Play is also enigmatic and contradictory in the logic of capital, which uses it as part of the commodity spectacle. It acquires an ambiguity that it does not in itself possess. This ambiguity comes from the illusory structure of capitalist production. In this way, the game simply becomes a suspension of production, a parenthesis of peace in everyday life. So play comes to be programmed and used scenically. When it is outside the dominion of capital, play is harmoniously structured by its own creative impulse. It is not linked to this or that performance required by the forces of the world of production, but develops autonomously. It is only in this reality that play is cheerful, that it gives joy. It does not suspend the unhappiness of the laceration caused by the exploitation, but realizes it to the full, making it become a participant in the reality of life. In this way, it opposes itself to the tricks put into act by the reality of death, even through play, to make the gloominess less gloomy. The destroyers of the death reality are struggling against the mythical reign of capitalist illusion, a reign which, although it aspires to eternity, rolls in the dust of the contingent. Joy emerges from the play of destructive action, from the recognition of the profound tragedy that this implies, and an awareness of the strength of enthusiasm that is capable of slaying the cobwebs of death. It is not a question of opposing horror with horror, tragedy with tragedy, death with death. It is a confrontation between joy and horror, joy and tragedy, joy and death. To kill a policeman, it is not necessary to don the judge's robes hastily cleansed with the blood of previous sentences. Courts and sentences are always part of the spectacle of capital, even when it is revolutionaries who act them out. When a policeman is killed, his responsibility is not weighed on the scales. The clash does not become a question of arithmetic. One is not programming a vision of the relationship between revolutionary movement and exploiters. One is responding at the immediate level to a need that has come to be structured within the revolutionary movement, a need that all the analysis and justifications of this world would never have succeeded in imposing on their own. This need is the attack on the enemy, the exploiters and their servants, and matures slowly within the structures of the movement. Only when it comes out into the open does the movement pass from the defensive phase to attack. Analysis and moral justification are upstream at the source, not downstream at the feet of those who come out into the street, poised to make them stumble. They exist in the centuries of systematic violence that capital has exercised over the exploited, but they do not necessarily come to light in a form that is complete and ready for use. That would be a further rationalization of intentions. Our dream of imposing a model on reality that does not belong to it. Let's hear these caustics come down. We do not support the role of reaction. That is not for us. We refuse to accept capital's ambiguous invitation. Rather than shoot our comrades or each other, it is always better to shoot policemen. There are times in history when science exists in the consciousness of those who are struggling. At such times, there is no need for interpreters of truth. It emerges from things as they are. It is the reality of the struggle that produces theory. The birth of the commodity market marked the formation of capital, the passage from feudal forms of production to the capitalist one. With the entrance of production into its spectacular phase, the commodity form is extended to everything that exists. Love, science, feelings, consciousness, etc. The spectacle has widened. The second phase does not, as the Marxists maintain, constitute a corruption of the first. It is a different phase altogether. Capital devours everything, even the revolution. If the latter does not break from the model of production, if it merely claims to impose alternative forms, capitalism will swallow it up within the commodity spectacle. Only the struggle cannot be swallowed up. Some of its forms, crystallizing in precise organizational entities, can end up being drawn into the spectacle. But when they break away from the deep significance that capital gives to production, this becomes extremely difficult. In the second phase, question of arithmetic and revenge do not make sense. If they are mentioned, they take on a metaphorical significance. The illusory game of capital, the commodity spectacle, must be substituted with the real game of the armed attack against it, for the destruction of the unreal and the spectacle. So that's part 8.
We got an Italian in the chat.
Based. Viva Italia.
Yeah.
Nice, good to have you, buddy. Nice profile picture too. I use the Tony Montana sometimes also. I use the one with him covered in blood and like the Hawaiian shirt. I like that one. But all Tony Montana is good.
This text sort of recurs the same themes a lot.
Yeah, like the commodity production stuff. Normally, like the normal left com argument is like the value form, which he's talking about how like the Marxists also get swallowed up. That's kind of like the left, like the talking point of like state capitalism, which is like interchangeable with state socialism. So like to them, you have to get rid of the value form entirely. For there to actually be an abolishment of capitalism. The value form being removed means like commodity production, wage labor, the concepts of like surplus value, are just kind of goes away entirely, including the idea of like private property.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And once that's why you have anti-workerism inside of this, because like working at least if you're producing something relies on the concept of a value form, because you have to you have to produce a commodity in the first place, which has to have a use value, and that relates over to the market and the profit motive and all kinds of other shit. But aside the point, like all these like socialist experiments had the commodity production or the value form model, and he brings up how it gets swallowed up because those are the characteristics that inherently makes the capitalistic economy is the value form, at least to like what the left comms argue. So like fascism and like Marxism are basically the two sides of the same coin in their view, as is liberalism.
Mhm. Yeah.
I disagree with that sentiment, but that's the argument.
Yeah, the only one who really tried to remove the value form is Pol Pot, and I actually view the value form and commodity as like necessary for economy, as I'm pretty sure you do too, Zolt.
I'm not as heavy on the economics side as you guys are. So I'll just let
Yeah,
you.
well, like, I mean, like, he talks about corporatism and the union, so, like, he obviously considers the union the main obstacle, so that means he's opposed to corporatism. So, like, you can probably get the generic argument is just going to be commodity production and value form.
Left
Uh,
comes also against unionism to an extent.
my counter argument would be is like it doesn't have to follow your reductionist take of economy like immediately. You have to have a developmental type economic basis, which is what corporatism does. That's why everybody ends up using corporatism eventually. So if you want to make communism possible, you're going to have to use corporatism until you have the correct conditions materialistically to achieve that. Now, like I don't think communism is possible, but I'm just saying that's why like the Soviet Union and like China have done varying degrees of corporatism, though not as like purely as like what Italy and Germany were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really have anything to add to that. It was a good analysis. Lane, anything to add before we move on? All right.
Move on now.
All right, let's read part 9. Do it yourself, Bricolor Manual. It's easy. You can do it yourself, alone or with a few trusted comrades. Complicated means are not necessary, not even great technical knowledge. Capital is vulnerable. All you need is to be decided. A load of talk has made us obtuse. It is not a question of fear. We aren't afraid, just stupidly full of prefabricated ideas we cannot break free from. Anyone who is determined to carry out his or her deed is not a courageous person. They are simply a person who has clarified their ideas, who has realized that it is pointless to make such an effort to play the part assigned to them by capital in the performance. Fully aware, they attack with cool determination, and in doing so, they realize themselves as human beings. They realize themselves in joy. The reign of death disappears before their eyes, even if they create destruction and terror for the bosses. In their hearts and in their hearts of the exploited, there is joy and calm. Revolutionary organizations have difficulty in understanding this. They impose a model that reproduces the reality of production. The quantitative destiny of the latter prevents them from having any qualitative move to the level of the aesthetic dimension of joy. These organizations also see armed attack in a purely quantitative light. Objectives are decided in terms of a frontal clash. In that way, capital is able to control any emergency. It can even allow itself the luxury of accepting the contradictions, point out spectacular objectives, exploit the negative effects on producers in order to widen the spectacle. Capital accepts the clash in the quantitative field because that is where it knows all the answers. It has a monopoly of the rules and produces the solutions itself. On the contrary, the joy of the revolutionary act is contagious. It spreads like a spot of oil. Play becomes meaningful when it acts on reality, but this meaning is not crystallized in a model that governs it from above. It breaks up into 1,000 meanings, all productive and unstable. The internal connections of play work themselves out in the action of attack, but the overall sense survives. The meaning that play has for those who are excluded and want to appropriate themselves of it. Those who decide to play first and those who observe the liberatory consequence of the game are essential to the game itself. The community of joy is structured in this way. It is a spontaneous way of coming into contact, fundamental for the realization of the most profound meaning of play. Play is a communitarian act. It rarely presents itself as one isolated fact. If it does, it often contains the negative elements of psychological repression. It is not a positive acceptance of play as a creative moment of struggle. It is the communitarian sense of play that prevents arbitrariness, in choice of the significance given to the game itself. In the absence of a communitarian relationship, the individual could impose their own rules and meanings that would be incomprehensible to anyone else. Simply making play becomes a temporary suspension of the negative consequences of their individual problems, the problems of work, alienation, exploitation. In the communitarian agreement, play is enriched by a flux of reciprocal actions. Creativity is greater when it comes from reciprocally verified liberated imaginations. Each new invention, each new possibility can be lived collectively, without pre-constituted models, and have a vital influence, even by simply being a creative moment, even if it encounters 1,000 difficulties during realization. A traditional revolutionary organization ends up imposing its technicians. It tends unavoidably towards technocracy. The great importance attached to the mechanical aspect of action condemns it along this road. A revolutionary structure that seeks the moment of joy in action, aimed at destroying power, considers the tools used to bring about the destruction. Just that means those who use these tools must not become slaves to them, just as those who do not know how to use them must not become slaves to those who do. The dictatorship of tools is the worst kind of dictatorship. Revolutionaries' most important weapon are their determination, their conscience, their decision to act, their individuality. Arms themselves are merely tools, and as such should continually be submitted to critical evaluation. It is necessary to develop a critique of arms. Too often we have seen the sanctification of the submachine gun and military efficiency. Armed struggle does not concern weapons alone. These alone cannot represent the revolutionary dimension. It is dangerous to reduce complex reality to one single thing. In fact, play involves this risk. It can make the living experience become no more than a toy, turning it into something magical and absolute. It is not by chance that the machine gun appears in the symbolism of many revolutionary combatant organizations. We must go beyond this in order to understand joy as the profound significance of the revolutionary struggle. Escaping the illusions and traps of part of the commodity spectacle through mythical and mythicized objects. Capital makes its final effort when faced with armed struggle. It engages itself on its last frontier. It needs the support of public opinion in order to act in a field where it is not too sure of itself. So it unleashes a psychological war using the most refined weapons of modern propaganda. Basically, the way capital is physically organized at the present time makes it vulnerable to any revolutionary structure capable of deciding its own timing and means of attack. It is quite aware of this weakness and is taking measures to compensate for it. The police are not enough, not even the army. It requires constant vigilance by the people themselves, even the most humble part of the proletariat. So to do this, it must divide the class front. It must spread the myth of the danger of armed organizations among the poor, along with that of the sanctity of the state, morality, the law, and so on. It indirectly pushes these organizations and their militants into assuming precise roles. Once in this role, play no longer has any meaning. Everything becomes serious, so illusory. It enters the domain of the spectacular and becomes a commodity. Joy becomes a mask. The individual becomes anonymous, lives out their role, no longer able to distinguish between appearance and reality. In order to break out of the magic circle of the theatricals of commodities, we must refuse all roles, including that of the professional revolutionary. Armed struggle must not let itself become something professional. Precisely that division of tasks that the external aspect of capitalist production wants to impose upon it. Do it yourself. Don't break up the global aspect of play by reducing it to roles. Defend your right to enjoy life. Obstruct capital's death project. The latter can only enter the world of creativity and play by transforming who is playing into a player, the living creator into a dead person who cheats themselves into believing they are alive. There would be no sense in talking about play any longer if the word play were to become centralized. We must foresee this possibility of capital taking up the revolutionary proposal again when we put forward our argument of armed joy. And one way this could come about is through the management of the world of play from the outside, by establishing the roles of the players and the mythology of the toy. In breaking the bonds of centralization, the military party, one obtains the result of confusing capital's ideas. Tuned as they are into the code of the spectacular productivity of the quantitative market, action coordinated by joy is an enigma of capital. It is nothing, something with no precise aim, devoid of reality. And this is so because the essence, the aims, and reality of capital are illusory, while the essence, aims, and reality of revolution are concrete. The code of the need for communism takes the place of the code of the need to produce. In the light of this need in the community of play, the decisions of the individual become meaningful. The unreal illusory character of the death models of the past is discovered. The destruction of the bosses means the destruction of commodities, and the destruction of commodities means the destruction of the bosses. That concludes part 9. Thoughts?
I don't have any strong opinions.
Same about.
All right. Yeah, I liked that line at the end. The destruction of the bosses means the destruction of commodities, and the destruction of commodities means the destruction of the bosses. Like, if you want to get rid of the bosses, you got to get rid of the means in which they exist. So get rid of the commodities, get rid of like the consumer lifestyle. Yeah, you must destroy the system completely and build from the ground up.
A lot of themes of total destruction throughout the text, and that reoccurs quite a bit. The same with the anti-work stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It gets more repetitive to talk about than it does to read, I guess, but still.
Yeah, like every chapter like does kind of have to be there. He's setting it up. It's just like we're stopping after each chapter to discuss, and there aren't always like new insights to be had. Like we kind of covered our thoughts on the worker stuff. We're almost done. There's like 2 more chapters. The last one's really short. So if no one has anything to say, I guess I'll read part 10.
Continue.
All right, part 10. The owl takes flight, Athenian proverb. The owl takes flight. May actions that start off badly come to a good end. May the revolution put off by revolutionaries for so long be realized in spite of the latter's residual desire for social peace. Capital will give the last word to the white coats. Prisons will not last for long. Fortresses of a past that survives only in the fantasies of some exalted old reactionary. They will disappear along with the ideology based on social orthopedics. There will no longer be convicts. The criminalization capital creates will be rationalized. It will be processed through asylums. When the whole of reality is spectacular, to refuse the spectacle means to be outside reality. Anyone who refuses the code of commodities is mad. Refusal to bow down before the commodity god will result in one's being committed to a mental asylum. There, the treatment will be radical. No more inquisitorial style torture or blood on the walls. Such things upset public opinion. They cause the self-righteous to intervene, give rise to justification and making amends, and disturb the harmony of the spectacle. The total annihilation of the personality, considered to be the only radical cure for sick minds, does not upset anyone. As long as the man in the street feels he is surrounded by the imperturbable atmosphere of the capitalist spectacle, he will feel safe from the asylum doors ever slamming shut on him. The world of madness will seem to him to be elsewhere, even though there is always an asylum available next to every factory, opposite every school, behind every patch of land, in the middle of every housing estate. In our critical obtuseness, we must take care not to pave the way to the civil servants in white coats. Capital is programming a code of interpretation to be circulated at mass level. On the basis of this code, public health will get used to seeing those who attack the boss's order of things, that is to say, revolutionaries, as practically mad. Hence the need to have them put away in mental asylums. Prisons are also rationalizing along the German model. First, they will transform themselves into special prisons for revolutionaries, then into model prisons, then into real concentration camps for brain manipulation, and finally mental asylums. Capital's behavior is not dictated by the need to defend itself from the struggles of the exploited alone. It is dictated by the logic of the code of commodity production. For capital, the asylum is a place where the globality of spectacular functioning is interrupted. Prison deliberately tries to do this, but does not succeed, blocked as it is by its basic ideology of social orthopedics. On the contrary, the place of the asylum does not have a beginning or an end. It has no history, does not have the mutuability of the spectacle. It is the place of silence. The other place of silence, the graveyard, has the faculty to speak aloud. Dead men talk, and our dead talk loudly. They can be heavy, very heavy. That is why capital will try to have fewer and fewer of them, and the number of guests in asylum will increase correspondingly. The homeland of socialism has such an impart in this field. The asylum is the perfect therapeutic rationalization of free time, the suspension of work without trauma to the commodity structure, lack of productivity without denial of it. The madman does not have to work, and in not doing so, he confirms that work is wisdom, the opposite of madness. When we say the time is not right for an armed attack on the state, we are pushing open doors of the mental asylum for the comrades who are carrying out such attacks. When we say it is not the time for revolution, we are tightening the cords of the straitjacket. When we say these actions are objectively a provocation, we don the white coats of the torturers. When the number of opponents was inconsiderable, grape shot was effective. A dozen dead can be tolerated. 30,000, 100,000, 200,000 would mark a turning point in history, a revolutionary point of reference of such blinding luminosity as to disrupt the peaceful harmony of the commodity spectacle. Besides, capital is more cunning. Drugs have a neutrality that bullets do not possess. They have the alibi of being therapeutic. May capital's statute of madness be thrown in its face. Society is one immense mental asylum. May the terms of the counterpositions be overturned. The neutralization of the individual is a constant practice in capital's reified totality. The flattening of opinions is a therapeutic process, a death machine. Production cannot take place without it flattening in the spectacular form of capitalism. And if this refusal of all that, the choice of joy in the face of death, is a sign of madness, it is time everyone began to understand the trap that lurks beneath it all. The whole apparatus of the Western cultural tradition is a death machine, the negation of reality, a reign of the fictitious that has accumulated every kind of infamy and injustice, exploitation and genocide. If the refusal of this logic is condemned as madness, then we must distinguish between madness and madness. Joy is arming itself. Its attack is overcoming the commodity hallucination, machinery, vengeance, the leader, the party, quantity. Its struggle is breaking down the logic of profit, the architecture of the market, the programming of life, the last document in the last archive. Its violent explosion is overturning the order of dependency, the nomenclature of positive and negative, the code of the commodity illusion. But all this must be able to communicate itself. The passage from the world of joy to the world of death is not easy. The codes are out of phase and end up wiping each other out. What is considered illusion in the world of joy is reality in the world of death, and vice versa. Physical death, so much a preoccupation in the death world, is less mortifying than what is peddled as life. Hence capital's capacity to mystify messages of joy. Even revolutionaries of the quantitative logic are incapable of understanding experiences of joy and death. Sometimes they hesitantly make insignificant approaches. At other times, they let themselves go with condemnation that is not very different to that of capital. In the commodity spectacle, it is goods that count. The active element of this accumulated mass is work. Nothing can be positive and negative at the same time within the framework of production. It is possible to assert non-work, not the negation of work, but its temporary suspension. In the same way, it is possible to assert the non-commodity, the personalized object, but only in the context of free time, i.e., something that is produced as a hobby, and the time lapse is conceded by the productive cycle. In this sense, it is clear that these concepts, non-work and the non-commodity, are functional to the general model of production. Only by clarifying the meaning of joy and the corresponding meaning of death as components of two opposing worlds, struggling against each other, is it possible to communicate elements of the actions of joy, without eluding ourselves that we can communicate all of them. anyone who begins to experience joy, even in a perspective non-directly linked to the attack on capital, is more willing to grasp the significance of the attack, at least more than those who remain tied to an outdated vision of the clash based on the illusion of quantity. So the owl could still take wing and fly. It's part 10. Thoughts?
Those who go against capital are placed into the realm of unreason. They're placed as insane.
Yeah.
He talks about that a lot. And there's only so many that they will let put on public that are part of that insane.
The ones that go against capital, they're usually platformed, really aren't going against capital. They're kind of embodying capital. They just have the rhetoric. I could think of Vosh, for example, who's promoted by the YouTube algorithm, or like your various other champagne socialists.
Yeah. And most of those bread tube guys are like a fucking neo-lib behind them. Forgot his name, but...
It's what they did to Ezra Pound at the end of World War One. They labeled him.
Yeah,
insane.
they literally they drove him insane, Ezra Pound.
Yeah.
They called him insane, and then they actually literally drove him insane, and then he refused to talk for quite some time.
Yeah, they tortured him and put him through hell for fighting with the fascists or making propaganda for the fascists. I don't think he was actually a soldier.
He did some radio speeches, and I believe he wrote for Mosley.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet! I just got back.
Yeah. Ezra Pound did. You can read his radio speeches. I've read parts of them. There's just, I don't know. There's a lot of anti-Semitism.
I do want to bring up, though, but besides those people that are approved who have anti-capital rhetoric but embody capital themselves, there's more historical examples of that. And from liberalism to fascism, industrialism under fascism, you have Gramsci, who basically observed how, like, communists, at least in some specific organizations, were being paid by industrialists, basically, to break up fascist unions or disrupt labor organizations. That's like another example, but essentially, people who have actual anti-capitalistic views are targeted and deplatformed, and regardless what people think about, like, say, the dissident right, the alt-right, fascism, National Socialism, like, whatever, or even some, like, actual serious communists, because there is genuine communists who, like, actually read their theory and understand it and want to put it into praxis, or at least advocate and study it, even though they're kind of rare. All of them have genuine anti-capitalist views, or at least feelings that are genuinely anti-capitalist and kind of embody working class sentiments that's kind of persecuted or deplatformed from the institutions itself. And the people that are normally propped up kind of just are kind of the approved pressure valve, which is what you see with a lot of populist politics within electoralism, or the talking heads that are kind of promoted by the system at the same time. Even so-called grassroots people who kind of appear and become like the forefront, the face of something. And that's what BreadTube kind of is. Like Caleb Maupin did a pretty good investigation, and how, like, BreadTube was highly connected with actually the military-industrial complex, of like a big neocon guy who's been acting as an advisor for some of the top personalities. And, like, I have my own problems with Maupin too, because he's kind of a product of that too. He's a part of Russia Today, which isn't really that much different. But the general idea is, like, all politics, all activism, all praxis, anything a part of the current system is completely tied into essentially modern day, like, late capitalism, and there's really no way to escape it. And that's probably why you have, like, this very radical mentality coming out of this, like, writing the Fizz.
Yeah.
You have total destruction. That's his conclusion. Is the only way to sort of
Yeah, no
escape the
compromises.
capital.
Yeah. The system has to fall, pretty much.
But yeah, I was talking about that with Maupin. I couldn't remember the guy he named, but it was like some neoliberal neocon that's behind most of BreadTube advising what to make.
Can you link me that video by Malpin where he talks about BreadTube?
It was like during an interview. I remember the
Was
clip.
it?
There's a clip from Love Life Anarchy who has it. I'll find it on Telegram. If you give me a second, I can link it to you right now, and you could probably play it.
I don't know if I want. Like, we're already like over
All right.
2 hours. Yeah, I usually like keeping these at about an hour. I think if it goes too long, like people don't want to watch the 2-3 hour thing. I personally don't. I like podcasts to be like an hour long. So that's my personal thing.
You got my podcasts, like the longest one 4 hours long.
Yeah, if it's just like a shitpost stream and we're just shooting the shit, like it's different. It's more about the live experience. It's not like something I'd go back and watch ever. Like our pizza stream. We had to take 300 down because there were some copyright things. I played a clip from the movie Possession, and that's what got us taken down. I didn't even play it with sound, but yeah.
Yeah, copyright's retarded. It literally should not exist.
Yeah, it's gay.
Intellectual property should not exist. It's not real property.
Yeah. But yeah, like that 5-minute clip I played without sound that we talked over. It's kind of just promoting the movie, like it's promoting your work, bro. But it's just the algorithm does it automatically, so that sucks. But no one goes back and watches those anyways. I don't think. Like it's more just in the moment. It's fun for the people who are on. Yeah, I'm not super upset that it's not up anymore. But if anyone's wondering, that's why the 300 stream isn't up. Get us to 400 subscribers, and we'll do another shitpost stream. I have fun doing them personally. Like I enjoy it, but anyway, yeah, let's conclude. I've quoted this chapter on the Futurism Forever channel.
Did we ever cover the strategy of tension and the anarchist view of tension?
No. Do you want to?
What was the anarchist view of tension?
The anarchist view of tension. You would have to read The Anarchist Tension by Alfredo Bonnano. I'm not going to truncate it. It's more or less the same, though. He's like pushing for acts of terror to escalate dysfunction in the systems to try and push it to collapse.
Yeah, so Freda's idea is that you should promote total and utter chaos, but like you shouldn't have the system completely and totally collapse. His view is that we have to do attacks and then pin it on communists and also infiltrate communists and do these attacks, and it would create chaos. We would kill lots of civilians to the point where the government wouldn't be able to do its job, and in doing so the military would then back us to establish law and order, which is kind of what was going to go on, but it ended up failing. But it was very close to succeeding. Now, the reason why it failed is because one of them turned it into an informant, and that was one of the generals who was supposed to help with the coup kind of didn't show up on time, kind of similar to the beer hall poosh. Yeah. So kind of fucked everything. But as far as the strategy went too, the communists that Freda's guys infiltrated, like the Red Brigades, for example, they adopted a strategy of tension themselves. Their idea was that Freda's people convinced them that if we do these attacks, the government will become totalitarian, it will work with fascists, and then we can stage a working class revolution, and we can use the mentality that we are fighting the fascists as the partisans, just like in World War II again. And it would give them a justification to completely overhaul the society. Now, Freda was able to get them to kind of buy the Kool-Aid in that sense, and to kind of do what he wanted. And so in a way, he kind of got communists to do terrorism as a form of bait to allow him to stage a coup, if that makes sense. and he got a lot of backing in the process to do that. Now, like the strategy of tension itself, it basically advocated to. Sorry, I'm just want to say real quick, I do not support any of this. Kill people in like governmental positions, to target civilians and kill them. Target police, target governmental buildings, like places where children might be. Cause complete and utter carnage, essentially, to create this destabilization. And that process, you kind of call it the siege of the Years of Lead, but the difference is that Freda didn't advocate cell organizationalism. He advocated a very centralized hierarchical system with him as the head. So his organization kind of functioned as the one giving the orders, not really the one doing the attacks. And then he would tell groups like the Revolutionary Armed Nucleus to go shoot this dude. Or he would tell somebody in the Red Brigades, like, hey, I want you to blow up this building. And then that's kind of what they would do.
Yeah.
He also had connections with some like groups in the CCP that were helping him train members of his organization to stage like an urban guerrilla warfare strategy.
Yeah. You mentioned Siege. The thing with Siege is like James Mason does actually like counter signal like the kind of lone wolf attacks that like people inspired by Siege engage in, like the Brenton Tarrant kind of attacks. He thinks they're pointless. So like I don't know. A lot of these Siege cards I don't think bothered to read Siege. He does like think we should attack the system, but like attacking civilians and shit is not something he actually promotes.
Yeah, he says to hit high and hit hard, and if you don't, make sure you take a lot of them with you. Now, like I personally think that mentality is kind of retarded because it doesn't really allow you to take power. And the only time this type of strategy is like even viable is when the society itself is within a very bad situation. Our society is very stable, so like it's not viable. 1, 2, it's not optical, and 3. Personally, I just don't support killing people, regardless if I disagree with them. So like it's not really something I want to endorse.
As far as like the Nazmau meme goes, like how do you actually feel about it? Like he's an interesting guy for sure. I'd recommend reading.
Yeah, I like his ideology. I agree a lot with his like worldview. I just disagree with his like revolutionary strategy. I don't agree with his take on traditionalism either, but I like his economic views and state organization.
Yeah, he's definitely an interesting guy. I'd recommend reading Disintegration of the System, but I wouldn't.
Yeah, if
say
anybody wants a PDF of it, just message me on Telegram or something. I can send it to you.
PDF on archive.org.
Well, I have like the full high quality PDF, but I kind of want to make like a book copy version we can put on Lulu that's actually good quality.
I could help you with that, I guess.
Based.
If you really want me to.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I've adopted like Nazmaoism as like my worldview. I'm Anfash gang personally. I like the overlap of the.
Your infrared's meme. Fascism is anarchism.
Yeah, as well as the Sallow thing. Us fascists are the only true anarchists.
It's a good meme.
Yeah, that's
I feel like the Anfash meme. It confuses people. It puts them off.
The realist Anfasts are those Tempest people because because one of them is literally a cross-dresser, then one of them is also a very popular like cross-dresser called Dark Trap Waifu.
To answer this question,
It's kind of cursed.
Gio is an Italian supremacist. I honestly I care about Italian interests first, even if it's bad for other European groups.
Dude,
I'd still
real
support
question.
it if it's good for Italians.
Real question is, I was listening to, I was listening to like the Tempest guys, like they speak in like Spanish, right? Like on their podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like one of the dudes translated it for me with like subs, and they were literally talking about like revolution and taking down the system and why we should get rid of the value form and why we should have like fully militarized society. Then the next moment, one of them's talking about the taste of cum.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
That made me want to shoot myself.
Do you speak Spanish? Like, I can't like listen to their podcast.
No, somebody had to sub it for me.
Yeah, we've had Lazardi on the podcast. He was on episode 1 of Bonnano Gang.
Honestly, like, they're interesting, but like, I don't think they have very
I don't think they're
Very
very
good people.
coherent.
I think they don't have very good people. Let's just say that it's kind of similar to Pine Gang in my view.
They promote like anarchism as like a strategy for fascism, like a vehicle to get to fascism. To Alcaz is back. Welcome
Yo.
back.
Hello.
God, dude, you've been gone forever.
You
Yeah,
missed
I had
like
go
you missed
fucking
like
eat
You
dinner
missed
with
the
my
whole
family.
book, pretty much.
Damn Mongolian.
you made it for the very last chapter. You're probably not gonna have much. Well, he's read the book before though, so
Yeah, I have.
So like yeah, we'll read the final chapter and then we'll do final thoughts. And we'll
Final chapter is literally a paragraph.
Yeah, it's very brief. Like I've quoted this on the Telegram channel a couple.
Yeah,
of
it's
times.
good. It's
I
good.
do like this chapter a lot. Anyway,
It's very Nietzschean.
yeah, chapter 11. Forward, everyone, and with arms and heart, word and pen, dagger and gun, irony and curse, theft, poisoning, and arson. Let's make war on society. De Jacques. Let's be done with waiting, doubts, dreams of social peace, little compromises and naivety, all metaphorical rubbish supplied to us in the shops of capitalism. Let's put aside the great analysis that explain everything down to the most minute detail. Huge volumes filled with common sense and fear. Let's put aside democratic and bourgeois illusions of discussion and dialogue, debate and assembly, and the enlightened capabilities of the mafiosi bosses. Let's put aside the wisdom that the bourgeois work ethic has dug into our hearts. Let's put aside the centuries of Christianity that have educated us to sacrifice and obedience. Let's put aside priests, bosses, revolutionary leaders, less revolutionary ones, and those who aren't revolutionary at all. Let's put aside numbers, illusions of quantity, the laws of the market. Let us sit for a moment on the ruins of the history of the persecuted and reflect. The world does not belong to us. If it has a master who is stupid enough to want it the way it is, let him have it. Let him count the ruins in the place of buildings, the graveyards in the place of cities, the mud in the place of rivers, and the putrid sludge in the place of seas. The greatest conjuring trick in the world no longer enchants us. We are certain that communities of joy will emerge from our struggle here and now. And for the first time, life will triumph over death. So that's the concludes Armed Joy by Alfredo Bonnano.
I felt like that could have been written by Marinetti.
Yeah, it is
There's
very
a few
Marinetti.
parts of this that could be written by Marinetti.
Yeah,
Quite a few.
Yeah, it reminds me of his like "I am a Darwinist" like quote where he's basically saying I support like killing half the world's population or something.
glorification of violence, man. It's like one of the main themes of futurism, and there's definitely a lot of that in Armed Joy. It has its edgy moments. It's not like it's not as edgy as some people.
Is it as edgy as me saying the Holodomor was based?
That's pretty edgy.
Yeah.
They tried to cancel me over that.
Yeah, it was. It definitely triggered the Wignats and the Pine Fags.
That means I did something right.
Yeah, exactly. Like these people are scumbags, so it's like if they like you, if they support you, like you're doing something
The
terribly
lion
wrong.
doesn't
Like,
boost.
Oh,
sweet
guys,
over
my
the
white
opinion of
Ukrainians. Let's ignore the fact they probably would have been colonized or enslaved.
yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
like I was saying before though, the paragraph's very Nietzschean. It's all about like overcoming the sacrifice and obedience in the Christian doctrine and throwing away all societal illusions.
yeah, all spooks.
Yeah, it's egoist and Nietzschean in that sense.
Yeah, and
I like the words like that. And for the first time, life will triumph over death. You kind of see that in Nietzsche, when Nietzsche kind of views Christianity as being exemplifying death and dying and going to heaven
Yeah.
as the
Yeah,
highest.
the denial of life.
yeah, there is the whole like joy element to this text, though. Like it's not it is life affirming, and it wants people to enjoy life. Like I think it is like largely life affirming and positive.
It's not nihilistic or
know,
pessimistic.
Yeah, exactly. He's trying to get humanity to a better place than where it's at. It's not just death and destruction for the sake of death and destruction. It's because the system is literally a death machine that makes everyone miserable. And
like it's not some fucking order of 9 angles bullshit. It's
Yeah,
more about
exactly.
it's about like having this destruction for a purpose.
yeah,
It's not
I
just
think
revel
yeah, I think it's like it's not nihilistic. He encourages doing violent things, but I think the cause is
With a purpose.
the cause is noble, in my opinion. So,
Not chaotic shit.
well, it is. It's anarchism, right? So,
Well, it's chaotic in the sense of revolution, but like the violence isn't like you could say it's chaotic as it's going after society, but in a sense it's controlled and that it has a goal of getting rid of capitalism. You're not really going around and like, oh god, I just want to like hurt this random brown dude who hasn't done anything to me because like my satanic religion told me to do it.
Yeah, I cannot co-sign that kind of shit. I don't believe in like hurting civilians, like the Brenton Terrence and shit. Like the Wignats get mad. You can't like insult our saints, but like he's not my fucking saint. Like I don't see any heroism in like gunning down unarmed civilians. Like I will never co-sign that shit. It's not heroic.
Yeah, it's different
when
it's different when it's against like politicians or corporations. Like you know, I don't advocate that shit, but it's different than killing civilians.
Hey, we talked about that a lot on the Bonnano gang. Oh, CSD is back on the last minute.
Everybody's
After the
showing
last
up,
chapter.
like,
My god. You guys are all speds, holy shit.
I told Gio, man, I'd have to leave pretty soon.
Yeah.
I gotta go eat dinner.
I thought it would be a half hour.
No, nigga, I ate out.
The Mongolian dinner is eating all of China.
Yeah.
Base?
You just ate the Chinese, and that is what that is.
You goddamn shitty Mongolian! Shit on my shitty walk!
So far that you missed.
I got something a little bit bigger than a baseball.
Oh man, I'm Tony Montana.
CSD, final thoughts on Armed Joy.
I only read part of it, so from what I read, it's pretty interesting, and it's good to get another perspective on the Years of Lead. That's all I gotta say.
Yep, based Dugan his take.
I would like to cover Brigata Rosa at some point. Find the text of like the Red Brigades and.
For sure.
They're a whole
Also, one last thing: Nazgul Gang is better than
It's really
Nazi
interesting.
Gang.
No more. No.
We're gonna start a more.
They're both retarded.
I
What?
agree with
Become
Outcast, to be honest.
I'm
Just
calling on
gang
all
will kill all the other
Nazguls of
gangs.
Wake
I am
Forest
going.
Nazi
I am
Nazgul
going.
Gang.
I am going to say the R word.
Retard.
No, starts.
Racism.
It goes R. Then you say the word ape.
No rape. I don't condone that.
Hey Gio, at least I hit it behind like a call sign right there, like the ape emoji.
I unironically think rapists deserve the death penalty.
No, I do agree.
Yeah, okay. I know you're shit posting. I'm an old man, and I'm grumpy.
Yeah, like they started calling the Nazmal people like in my chat the rape shirts.
The rape shirts.
I thought you
Like
called
the
them the
one
rape
boy
guard.
Vice has.
Sometimes you call me a fucking sped. Jesus Christ, dude. It's more speditry.
Hey, so what I do is make a shit post and all my fan base like latches on to it because they're as autistic as I am, I guess.
You're an influential man. What can I say?
You have control over a bunch of
Nazmal will take over the
Get some
world.
bitches on your dick, so and stop talking about rape.
Oh boy. I could take.
for niggas who can't get laid.
Did you find a fascist feminist to bring on your podcast yet? I know you.
No. Like the one I was wanting to come on, she got nuked. Woomy.
Yeah.
I haven't seen her since.
I saw you talking to Radfem Hitler on Twitter.
Yeah, she doesn't know a lot about it, so like I just gave her material to read, and I was like, here, and she liked it, and I was like, cool.
She's like a popular account though. She's like a big name on Twitter.
Yeah, me and her are friends.
I personally don't like her because she's anti-Italian.
Like I'm friends with, but yeah, I'm friends with a lot of Radfems though. It's really weird.
Yeah.
Gio, why is she
Yeah, that boggles
anti-Italian?
my mind, dude.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm friends with a bunch of trans anarchists, so
Yeah, hey man, like
That's not something to brag about, dude.
that's
I
like
know, I'm
that's
not
kind of
bragging
common. That's
about
kind
it.
of common though. Like, but like
He posted our Bonnano Gang episode in one of their chats, and one of them
Yeah.
liked it. He gave us a follow. So
yeah.
that was
I mean, I
gonna
sent
watch
mine
this.
to like a bunch of like communists that are watching it right now. But
yeah, that's cool. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for coming on, everybody. We're at like 2.5 hours.
did you guys
so-
do Soviet futurism already?
Not,
No, we
not yet.
haven't.
Not yet. I want to get to it, but I want to cover the Russian cosmicists too, if I'm pronouncing that wrong.
Mhm.
Forgive me. Kind of getting tired, but yeah, I do want to get into Russian futurism. We haven't gotten into it yet, but it is in the.
When I do my video on futurism, we're going to be covering the French, Russian, and Italian, then also the very brief German one.
What about vorticism, like the British movement?
I don't think we're going to cover it because like it's technically it's distinct, but it's similar.
It is.
It looks similar. It has a very similar aesthetic.
Yeah, and a similar aesthetic, just slightly different viewpoint.
Yeah, they were more skeptical of technology. They weren't all embracing of it the way Marinetti was. There are important differences.
Mhm.
But, like, yeah, stylistically, it is very similar. I think it's going to, like, I'm assuming it's more about, like, the political implications of futurism than, like,
Yeah, we're going to be talking about like its influence in French fascism, Italian fascism. What was its viewpoints and stuff like that.
Russian
And
Bolshevism.
yeah, its influences like in Marxism. Then it's eventually the decline in France, Italy. Then also its banning in Russia.
Russia.
yeah.
Didn't it also get banned in Germany?
Well,
Yes.
in Germany, like you only had a couple futurist artists, and like they kind of like dropped it and went over to expressionism. Then that got banned. They got banned, but it was considered a form of degenerate art.
Yeah. Mussolini wouldn't let Hitler's degenerate art show in Italy because it featured futurism. And yeah.
Yeah, Marinetti convinced them not to.
Yeah. Italy never had like the repression of art that like the Soviet
Germany
Union had
had.
or Germany. Which I agree with that. I think artists should be free to express themselves how they see fit. It's not a political issue. Government should stay out of it.
I mean, I get shit for liking brutalism.
I like brutalism too, and I have gotten shit for it. I don't post it as much as I used to, but
Back
I was-
when you first started the chat, there was.
I mean,
quite a few
Evola like
people
data
complaining
is
about
so
it.
I don't really see the problem.
Data. James posted.
Evola was a dataist.
Data.
Like when I first heard of data, I thought that was some weird sexual kink.
no.
Don't ask why.
No.
We covered Tristan Zara, the Dada Manifesto already.
I like that podcast.
Yeah, that was basically just me and Lane. Arjuna was there for a little bit, but we got a low turnout for that one. But I think we had a pretty good discussion. It got James pretty psyched about Dada, so
He's still posting about data to this day.
we
Yeah.
posted about Dada right there.
Yes.
I thought it was daddyism.
Only for you,
Alright.
CSD.
Hmm.
Yeah, we need to get like when I get one of those like feminists to come on, I need to make sure it's like some like crazy femdom chick, so it makes all like the retard incels go crazy in my super chats.
Yeah.
Vile.
That would be big.
Now that would be funny. Be like
That would be
the
hilarious.
Eroticism chat,
Oh,
That
God.
Woomy chick
but,
was
but
definitely
just
in the
actually
fandom.
horny posting.
Dude, no, I talked with Wumi. She actually was.
Oh, you
She
should
liked she
Arjuna
liked she
on
liked
when
she
you
liked she liked soft boys or twinks because she could like dominate and control them basically.
Bruh.
Oh, you
Yeah.
should get Arjuna on when you have that like live stream with that feminist chick. That would be hilarious.
Oh god. Like, is it really that weird that I made friends with the feminist community?
Yes, it
I
is.
don't know.
If they heard that
I
I do
had
rape,
one following me for quite some time.
if they hear I do the rape posting, they would probably stop liking me. But
Yeah, I think so.
Stop doing the right posting so it doesn't get you any fans.
oh god, he
No,
gets me the right fans.
It gets you the wrong fans.
No,
in
it
my
doesn't.
opinion. I like you, but like a lot of these Nazmau gang guys are
It gets
I
you
don't know.
Indians mostly.
They're kind of cringe.
Somebody said my Radfem harem.
I think you're better off with the Radfems. You know, it doesn't really
Nazmau MK Ultra.
Kuma's of the
Nazmau's
world
a
start
CIA
Kumi.
sex cult.
The CIA sex cult.
Naz-
Nazmau
Kumas
Nazmau,
of the
fucking
world
him, no.
unite and take over.
Nazmau actually is not a bad guy. Like he's been watching us for a while. He pops up in these live streams.
I mean, like, as far as Nazmau goes, it's been a meme for a while. I just kind of like grabbed onto it during the Freda thing and made it more popular, I guess you could say.
It has like kind of blown up recently. I'm not sure how long it will last.
Because I kept posting about it and sharing memes everywhere. Then infrared fans started posting about it. Then more of my fans started posting about it.
Yeah. I mean, there's good and bad in it. I would not call myself Nazmau gang, but I would recommend reading Disintegration of the System. It's worth a read. You know, why not? It's not that long, so.
What was your thoughts on it?
Zolt, the fucking translation was so bad. The one you got to that I bought from the bookshop you sent me. That translation was so bad. It was so badly formatted. The grammar was all over the place.
Yeah, I know. Like, the guy who did it, apparently I talked with him. He used Google Translate to do it. So,
yeah, it was unreadable. Like, I decided to give up.
Yeah, like, I have the PDF. I'll probably send it to Lane so he could probably make something that's better formatted to put on Lulu.
It's not even just the format, man. It's like the word choice is really weird. Like
No, the actual PDF version is like actually good grammar. It just the guy that made the one on Lulu, I know him, but I still got the book. Like, I was able to read it, but it was hard.
Also, if I'm there's also like on a WordPress, there's someone who's republished a lot of Frida's work in English.
Yeah, I would like to get his manifesto group at the
It amazes me he's still alive.
Yeah, lives in
Yeah,
protective
Zolt,
custody.
you need to meet him. Go fucking conjugal visit him.
Why
Oh,
don't
that'd be cool.
You should get him on your podcast, man. That would be a
Dude, that'd be hard. I don't even think he speaks English though.
Yeah, that's probably.
Go learn Italian.
Yeah.
I can read Italian. I can speak a little, but I'm not fluent. Yeah, we should probably. I don't know what else to talk about.
We should probably end the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for coming on.
Yep.
We'll be back next week to do Chapter 3 of Bonnano Gang. So, till then,
Yeah.
salute.